So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, everybody. We are live with Eric with Erika 3, which I have titled Back to Perfection because I watched Tremors 2 last night. It's literally the only reason.
So I noticed, I actually did notice that, Dapper, and it's very funny to me that you also just watched Tremors 2 Back to Perfection, because I myself am working through the Tremors movies, and I was pleasantly surprised by the bizarre life cycle of the graboids in Tremors 2, given that they have a portion where they just metamorphosize into 5 shriekers, which then terrorize the town.
Well, spoilers, it gets crazier as they go, at least up until 4, I believe. So
I have heard that there are ass blasters involved, and that is the scientific name for those of you out there in the ether.
Yes, that is the correct official term for this creature. It is in fact the ass blaster. But first, before we really get into the actual thing with Eric Hovind, I want to say a very special thank you because I just turned on memberships the other day, and I now have 5 members already. So far we have Ilya Moon, we have Crafty Keela, Bent Hovind, no relation, Thronmulus, and TD Lane. So, if you guys want to put a few, don't spam the emojis because sometimes Google doesn't like that. But if you want to demonstrate some of my custom emojis, you can. And so actually, we also have Thronmulus who actually joined as an amniote, and everyone else joined as a tetrapod. So there are different tiers with different perks, and if you do join, send me a message on like Twitter or Discord or something, and I will add you to the member/patron only Discord server. Which is there's sometimes a delay in me responding to things that I see in there, but I see everything that goes in there. Unlike, say, the fan Discord, which just goes so fast that I cannot see everything in there. Because I'll come back an hour later and there'll be 300 new messages, and I'm just like, nope, I can't. I cannot keep track of all of them. Sorry, guys. So there's that, and also you will, if you're in that Discord, you will get links to my unlisted videos that are upcoming, usually about a week or so before they go live. So, and if you don't want to, then don't. But I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who did join, and if you join now, I will make sure to announce it as we go. But we are here to probably finish up this interview that Eric Hovind did with some Christian radio show about human evolution.
We're really big fans of Christian radio shows, particularly Real Science Radio with Bob Enyart.
Oh my goodness.
I'm disappointed that our boy Eric was not with Bobby. Bobby's got some wild ideas. He's a hydroplate proponent, so we have fun with Bobby. I would love to have a conversation with him someday. He seems totally wild.
Oh, and by the way, that little green guy is the tetrapod emoji, which you get if you first join. And yes, he is wearing a top hat. And there is also a separate top hat emoji, as well as a monocle emoji, a Kent emoji, and there's a me emoji. You can put the Dapper Dino up as an emoji now. So, and the world.
One of the.
Sorry, and this world and beyond. This is not a debate. We are doing a live react, if you will. So let's quickly go over our drinking rules, and then we will just dive right into it. Because enough of this preamble stuff, right? Okay.
Yes, enough of the preamble stuff.
So I'm gonna make sure that Godzilla is active, just in case. So, we do not recommend that you play along with the drinking game because it is dangerous. However, if you choose to, the drinking rules are, we drink whenever Eric says something that is just so stupid that we have to numb the pain, and we drink. We also drink if he gets something that's actually right, where he's not just quoting someone. That doesn't happen a lot. We also drink if there is a joke that just falls flat and we basically don't even notice it was a joke until well after, and we're like, oh wait, that was a joke. We'll take a drink for that. And if we get an audible visit from one of our Toho Kaiju friends, such as Mothra or Godzilla, we will take a drink in honor of that. And Bent Hovind might demonstrate Godzilla coming up here at some point. Hopefully, maybe, Bent. And actually, I need to close one of my tabs on my browser that sometimes makes inappropriate noise that will be captured. So, there we go. Erika, are you ready for some more Eric Hovind?
I'm ready. I love spending time with Eric. I find him to be like he's kind of like a Flanders type, right? He's enjoyable. He tends to be pretty polite. He's less vitriolic than his father, which, depending on what you're in the mood for, it depends on what kind of taste your palate is craving. If you want the spicy bitterness that comes with a Kent conversation, or sort of the smooth dullardry that goes with Eric. So I'm ready. I've cleansed my palate. I'm ready to go.
All right, and just to remind everyone, because it's been a while, when we left off, Eric was talking about how the dates associated with the geological timescale have been assigned. So I believe we're going to start with the interviewer's comments, but here we go.
Yeah, so let me get that straight. Okay, so wasn't it Charles Lyell that was reading James Hutton?
He's one of the main guys. Yeah, Charles Lyell, that came up with the geologic column.
And
that's broadly right enough. I'll take a drink for that. That's approximately right. It's a bit complicated. Yeah. Look, we don't want to be too stingy with getting stuff right, because they're talking to a lay audience. If they get something as right as I would expect an actual geologist to give, then fine. Because
give them the low-hanging fruit.
Right. Okay. So here we go.
He comes up with this column. He assigns dates to the layers, and he comes up with those dates out of thin air. He just looks at the fossils in the layers and says, "This has got to be X amount of years old," and he comes up with these dates. Time progresses. We come into an age where we now have radiometric dating, all types of scientific ways to supposedly determine the age of these rock layers. And you're telling me that they do not use radiometric dates to support the age of the rock layers? We're going off of what Charles Lyell said in the 1800s. And they don't have any solid radiometric proof?
Okay, I know it wasn't Eric, but I feel like that was stupid enough that I have to drink for it.
I don't even... First of all, same, but I don't even... to begin with that, because first of all, it's just like a blatant misunderstanding of the law of faunal succession, right? Like, these guys... And we've had this conversation before, Dapper, but these guys genuinely think that scientists in their given field, whatever evolutionary tangent or tie that it has to evolutionary biology, they think that we go out there and just kind of eyeball it, and then we're like, yeah, that was like, I don't know, 65, 66 million years old, maybe. I don't know. What do you think, Chet? And it's like that, faunal succession just lets us know kind of the general order, correct? It allows us to track across multiple kind of environments and habitats as well, paleo environments and paleo habitats as well.
So, there's Godzilla. It was working. We had a couple tests that failed, so I did some quick troubleshooting. Okay. So, by the way, I believe I now have enough members to add one more emoji. I'm going to double check. If so, I have a promised emoji that I promised to someone to add. But then after that, if we get a couple more emojis, I'll probably add a Godzilla and a Mothra emoji just for fun.
That would be absolutely superb.
Yes. Okay, so the way that I want to actually dive in a little bit into how the relative dating was done, right? So one of the things that we established first is the law of superposition, right? You cannot have new strata form underneath already lithified rocks, right? Because that's not how gravity works. If you fall, you stop when you hit the ground. And deposition is primarily a gravitational thing. So now we know that lower rocks in undisturbed sediments says, if there's been uplift and folding, then we have to modify this a little bit. But in otherwise undisturbed sediments, or any layers really, higher is younger than lower. Then we look at the faunal succession. We can say, okay, well, given that we know these relative ages, we know that this group of fauna came before this other group. And then you can cross-correlate index fossils across the world, and then in other places you'll find the same layer that you found, say, in Cambridge, England, over in, say, like, the Sahara. But the Sahara might have an extra layer that you didn't get to see in Cambridge, but that is in fact present over in, like, China or something. And so as we notice across the world, there's always the same order, even though there are sometimes missing. Oh, there's Mothra. So even though we have missing layers at different places in the world, because the order remains consistent, we got this relative dating. But there was no absolute ages assigned. There were guesses, but most of them were far lower than the currently established dates.
I think the max was like, what, a couple dozen million years?
Yeah, I believe some of the more common estimates around the time that Darwin was even coming up with the theory of evolution included things like maybe 20, 30 million years for the entire age of the Earth. And that was just based on how long it seemed like it would take for this kind of sedimentation to occur. So these were always known to be sort of minimum estimates. Like the Earth can't be much younger than this.
Yeah, I think too that it's important to note for everyone kind of watching out there that when we do have events of like uplift, or let's say, a river carves through a canyon of previously deposited strata, and then that river, after it dries up, is then filled in with new material. By looking at calling cards like Breccia or Brescia, however you pronounce it, Colton's gonna skin me alive for posting that one. But you can figure out kind of the general order still. Like they're not in the dark with this. We don't even require radiometric dating, as excellent of a tool as it is, to kind of get a feel for the order of when things were deposited. It's the law of superposition, like you said, combined with the know-how of the field.
Right. Now, what they also said the interviewer said was basically, so we don't use the radiometric dates to get the absolute dates on these. But that's the thing, we do. It just so happens that conveniently, radiometric dates generally line up very well with previously established relative dates. So strata that we know were younger based on the law of superposition end up testing late as younger when we can radiometrically test them. Surprise, surprise.
Imagine that. And I'm sure momentarily we're going to get some poo-pooing on radiometric dating as well, because of the numerous times that creationists just insist radiometrically dating rock formed from a fresh volcanic spill or whatever.
Using inappropriate techniques.
Right. Using complete, well, I mean, you wouldn't even date something that new.
Right, it just comes out as it's young.
To my knowledge, it's only doable.
Yeah,
it's just too young, or it wigs out and gives you some random age. But that's why we have protocol.
All right, so here we go. Oh, are you ready?
Oh no, I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
That these layers are the age that they say they are?
Well, here's what they'll do is anytime with radiometric dating, if they find an age that matches what the preconceived idea was on the age of these rock layers, they'll accept it. If they get wild dates that are outside of it, they'll just reject it and say, that was a bad sample.
That was just...
Yeah.
Wow, I'm getting another ulcer.
Okay. So...
You take this one first.
Okay. One thing is, in order for this to be a realistic thing that actually happens... Because you gotta remember, the vast majority of published results of radiometric dating are non-anomalous. Nearly everything that gets published is exactly where we would expect it to be. So in order for that to be the case, they would have to be ordering dozens of tests if the tests were essentially random. But the thing is, testing one sample often takes up a significant amount of the original grant money. You simply do not have the funding for this. Because, spoiler alert, sciences aren't funded like movies are, right? You don't get $13 million to go study a rock. It's just not going to happen.
You telling me a study on like mite sociality is not going to get you the same grant money as like Mission Impossible 12 would get?
No. Yeah, turns out you're not going to get the Hollywood budget, right? Yeah. So the thing is that even just from a monetary standpoint, because one of the things is public research grants you can just look up how much they got, right? It's a matter of public record because it's government spending and it's not classified. So now if it's a private grant, okay, it's a little bit trickier to find out. But even then, if you think that like Jeff Bezos is going to pay $13 million to find out how old a rock is, he's not going to, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's not going to happen.
No, and on top of that, too, these guys seem to have a very skewed idea on what a discordant date is, right? So when we're looking at say, a single chunk of rock, a very large chunk, because like you said, it uses up a lot of the sample to even date it.
Right.
And let's say we date it with, 2 or 3 different methods, and we get, 65 million years, 64.5 million years, and 66 million years. Well, it's between 64.5 and 66 because that's your range, but that would still be considered 3 discordant dates, right? I mean,
Right.
There's a range of acceptable overlap. And if it falls outside of that, even if it's just barely outside of it, it's considered discordant.
Right.
And that's usually what we get when we're talking about getting dates that don't match up. What we don't ever get is one that says, this is about 2.6 billion years old. And then by the second estimate, they're like, it's actually 5,500. It's like,
Right.
no.
That's not, yeah.
It doesn't range that much. It just doesn't.
The only time that something like that will happen is if you do not exclude xenoliths that might be older than the main bulk of your sample, which is a problem, which actually more or less counts as contamination because, in case people don't know, xenoliths, as the name implies, if you're good at Greek, there is foreign stones or foreign bits inside of this. So there are every kind of mineral has its own melting temperature. And if the magma that this igneous rock cooled from was never hot enough to melt some of the rocks in that mixture, they will not have had their atomic clocks reset when the magma cooled. So the most famous example is zircons. Zircons are usually about 4 billion years old because their melting temperature is so high that those temperatures just don't really occur close enough to the surface for them to melt. And so if you include those and they get included in the sample, you will get anomalously large dates. But the thing is, you can then just go check with a new sample where you carefully exclude zircons and you'll get the right date. So there are ways to check whether or not we have successfully tested whatever this rock is. And yeah.
The creationist understanding of this would be analogous to, like, in medicine, if someone comes in and they're like, ooh, owie, ouch, I have a viral infection of some sort. And then the doctor is like, let's give them antibiotics. And then the antibiotics don't work because it's a viral infection. And then the general scientific community is like, well, I guess we'll just throw medicine out.
It doesn't matter.
It just doesn't, it doesn't work that way.
All right, let's get a little bit more Eric in here. Oh, and by the way, in case anyone's wondering why we're not showing the video of Eric, there isn't any video of Eric. This is just a radio interview that wasn't, as far as I can tell, video recorded. So while I do have it saved as a video file, just because I downloaded it from, I shouldn't say that. I acquired it from YouTube somehow by totally legit means. Anyway, yeah, there's no actual video.
You're doing him a big favor because this picture of him, as seen in the background of the YouTube video, is actually just much more flattering. And we get to see, his what do you call it? His Prayer of Progress T-shirt.
Actually, the one that I use there is probably, I think it's actually one of the better ones. I mean,
I think the one you used is much more flattering, is what I'm saying. Yeah. I like his T-shirt better. I find it very, it's tongue-in-cheek. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, it's got a nice sense of humor, and yeah. All right, here we go.
So they've kind of got a built-in rescuing device to build in what they've already assumed to be true. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it gives them a way out every single time to be able to say, oh, well, yeah, that was a contaminated sample. Well, if you find one sample that's contaminated, how do you know that any other sample is not contaminated?
That's a good question. It's because we have ways to check. We can do things like isochron dating.
It's not just like isochron dating too. It's like these methods have been corroborated as accurate means to tell the date of something by comparing it within a range of other dating methods that other dating methods are capable of getting a read on. So if you want to look at something maybe that dendrochronology can double check you on, you can do that. Or you could check it with ice cores or coral clocks or, whatever. You can cross-check these things against one another. And by doing that, we can be like, okay, well, let's say the oldest coral clock can get you is like, 100,000 years. Well, then you can at the very least be like, well, we know for certain that this method is accurate up until that point. And if you're going to suggest that it's inaccurate after that point, then you have to provide a reason as to why you think that is so. That's kind of like our whole actualism, uniformitarianism at play there.
Right. And one thing I want to point out, because it's actually been mentioned now a few times in the chat, is one of the reasons isochrons are handy is because if the dates do not include any contamination that would affect the particular radiometric dating method being used in the isochron dating, then the ratios that you get for parent to daughter isotopes will not form a line. So you need at least 3 methods, because obviously any 2 methods will form a line, because a line can be defined with any 2 points. So obviously you need a third to make sure they're actually forming a line. But if there is contamination, they won't form a line. Now, the line doesn't have to be a complete perfect line, because nature is weird. But if there's not a very high, if the line of best fit doesn't have a very good R² value, then it's not going to count as being linear, and there's going to be assumed contamination, and you're going to get rid of probably all 3 dates, because it's hard to say which one is the one that's contaminated.
And the handy thing with isochron too is you don't need the knowledge of the parent and daughter right off of the bat. And you might have said that.
Yeah, I didn't say that, but it is true, because since they all cross-check each other, the ratios to start with actually end up canceling out in the equation, so it doesn't matter. And I guess,
imagine that internal checking, an internal check and balance.
Right, crazy, right?
I love around here.
So another thing is that this is sort of like, he's essentially saying, okay, so we had 5 people measure the height of this table, and all of them said 1 meter, except one guy who said, actually, it's 3.5 meters tall. And then you go, okay, well, that's a little weird. Can I see your meter stick? And it's not a meter stick. He used a foot-long ruler, and he just thought that was a meter. That's the kind of thing we're getting at here. It's just there's this one weird guy who gave a weird date. Let's check on that. And then it turns out, oh, he didn't do it right. Surprise, surprise. The one discordant thing is really weird for a good reason. So,
that's the irritating thing about this one, is that they can just come in and be like, oh, no, there are exceptions to the rule. And it's like,
oh, you just cut out.
Can't just run it.
Is there a way?
Can you hear me?
I think your noise gate might be too set incorrect. Are you using a noise gate on your microphone?
No, just 1 second. Hold.
Okay, we're gonna. Also, I love throwing this. I love that monocle emoji. It's one of my favorites.
Monocle emoji is absolutely adorable.
I made those emojis myself.
Is this better, Dapper? This classic.
It might be. It sounds like actually what's going on is that you have a noise threshold on your Discord. You might want to push that down to the left.
Rip. Wait, how do I do that?
Go to settings, and there should be voice and video.
Okay.
And then there should be an automatic noise gate, or something. There should be a noise gate in there. And you can unclick automatic noise gate and then just take the slider and push it to the left. Technical support with Dapper Dino.
Technical support with Dapper Dino.
While you work on that, we're going to get a little bit more Eric in here.
Please do.
What gives you that information? What you have to assume, the how much carbon is in something before you carbon date it. You have to assume that the rate of decay is consistent. You have to assume that it hasn't been contaminated. There are several assumptions that go into radiometric dating, and while I love...
So, okay, one, we don't actually have to assume that it hasn't been contaminated. We can check, as we've been saying. You don't actually have to assume, at least not in every case, the ratios of parent to daughter isotopes. And in some cases, we actually have cases where the daughter isotope is chemically excluded from whatever the crystal is during formation. So, for instance, in potassium argon, argon is generally chemically excluded from being in crystals as they form because, 1, it can escape from crystals being formed, and 2, being chemically inactive, essentially, because it has all of its electron orbitals are full, which means that none of the electron orbitals actually can receive, nor are they generally willing to give away electrons or even share, then that means that they will not go into the crystal matrix naturally. So any argon that is there tends to be from radiometric decay, otherwise it wouldn't be embedded in the crystal.
Right. This is the whole Woodmarap's fallacy thing, just being repeated over and over again as it spreads like a plague throughout the creationist kind of community. And the reason that they're fallacies is because they're fallacious. They don't apply. These complaints are accounted for by geologists. Like again, this is what happens when you have no knowledge of the field that you're critiquing. This would be like telling a mathematician how they're not taking certain variables into account in a given equation when you don't know how the equation works, or why it works the way that it works. Like it's like the blind leading the blind.
Yeah, it would be like, a 6-year-old saying, "Oh, why can't I divide by 0?" And it's like,
And you're
well,
just like, oh, well, actually, I think it would be more akin to a 6-year-old being like, can't divide by 0, and then going and telling all their friends that math just doesn't work because of this fatal flaw in the system. And then it's like, okay, but you're 6, and 2, maybe if you knew a little bit more about math, then you'd understand why you can't do the things that you're saying need to be like a thing in math.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. And I feel like, did he list another one of the assumptions? Oh yeah, the constant decay rates. So here's the thing about the decay rates, right?
I love this.
The decay rates are not just something that is just an arbitrary number that nature just kind of spewed out, right? These depend on things like deep things in quantum mechanics, like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, the strength of the strong nuclear force, macro and macroscopic cross sections for absorption of various kinds of radiation by the nucleus. All of these things, right, factor into this. And in order to change the decay rate, you have to fundamentally change quantum physics, which is one of the best supported. Our current theories about the quantum physics are extremely well supported. It is one of the best supported theories in physics right now.
100%. This is the radioactive decay law. This is not known to be broken at all in nature. And even when you can tinker with it slightly, the most that we as humans could do, throwing absolutely everything we had at elements, trying to force them to decay even slightly faster, was, I believe, 0.5%.
Yeah, basically 0.5%. And the thing is, okay, so 0.5%, if you have a radiometric date that comes back at 4 billion years, that's a long time, right? 0.5% is going to be, but it's not going to get you anywhere close to 6,000 years.
Well, and again, you can't just look at that and say, okay, well, there's a method by which this can occur, therefore it occurred, because one, there's nothing to suggest that it did, and we typically can tell when looking at an element, like I believe this was actually in the paper that they were talking about when they were capable of like reducing the half-life of something. This is actually a separate paper on nucleosynthesis. But when they looked at it, they were like, oh my God, like it doesn't look like the element it's supposed to look like, because we basically stripped all of the electrons off of it to make it decay faster. Which if it happened in nature would be like the most glaringly obvious fact about whatever sample you're looking at, is that it had been accelerated.
Right, because one of the things is when you do things like strip electrons that normally wouldn't be stripped off of an atom, they end up doing weird things chemically. So for instance, if you strip the electrons off of, say, noble gases, they'll form compounds, which they normally wouldn't do. So that's actually one of the reasons why there are, in fact, some existing compounds that use noble gases, is because when you strip their electrons away, the reason they don't normally react chemically is because the electrons are just happy where they are. But when there aren't any, or there are fewer, suddenly weird stuff happens.
Yeah, it's that too, and it's also the fact that every time they have been capable of doing this, it's been one on non-geologically relevant materials, so elements that are coincidentally formed in the bellies of stars, and thus would not be capable of like that process that whatever the given element went through to have its decay accelerated could not occur on Earth without basically melting it a couple dozen times over.
Well, creationists like to melt Earth. That's like one of their favorite hobbies, is melting Earth.
That is a motif that we find a lot when we give a closer look to any kind of hypotheses, particularly with regard to the flood. They really do just love setting this boy on fire.
Right. Well, the thing is, a lot of the processes that happen on Earth give off heat. And over the course of 4 billion years, that's not a big deal. But if you crunch it into 1 year, you now have 4 billion times more heat generation than you normally would. It turns out that's really bad.
Well, and that's why the smart ones, like the more professional creationists, which, those talk about an oxymoron, those are the ones that'll be like, yeah, we don't have a solution to this problem right now. We're going to find it later, but we don't have it right now. It's like, good on you. At least you admit that there isn't a current solution to the problem. That's about as much as we can expect.
Right.
With hydrocode, you expect nothing, and you're still disappointed.
All right, let's get a little bit more Eric in here.
The science of it, it's not what they used to come up with the age of the Earth or the age of the universe. It's not what they used to try to say that the geologic column is millions of years old. It's just simply not the case. They believed that before any of this was ever possible.
Okay, I
don't know.
I'll drink for that.
Eric needs to take a little time out here. And by little time out, I mean a large time out that spans approximately 4 years and is intermittently in a university classroom.
Yes. So, okay, he did technically get it right that radiometric dating is not how we know how old the universe is. So I'll take a quick drink because technically that's right.
Yeah, okay, we'll give that to him.
That is based on things like, observations of the cosmic microwave background radiation, expansion rates, how far we can actually see, stuff like that, right? Granted, no one has come up with a 13.8 or whatever billion-year-old hunk of rock, because we wouldn't expect there to be any such thing. Because it would have taken probably a few 100 million years to get the first thing you could identify as a rock anyway, after the Big Bang.
Yeah, any kind of rock. Anywhere in the entire universe. Like gases, it takes them a little while to kind of coalesce into something that is physical and can be dated.
Yeah, so that's true. But the thing is that if you look at estimates for the age of the Earth from before radiometric dating, they do not match our current scientific consensus. Instead, what they were is people like Lyle saying, hey, looking at how much rock there is and how long it takes for rock to lithify, based on, known physical and chemical properties of rock and the things that go into making rock, we have a minimum. And a common minimum was somewhere around 20 million years or something like that. And then Lord Kelvin gave his estimates based on thermodynamics, but then he had to up them significantly when he learned about radioactive decay and that the sun might be there might be fusion in there. The sun wasn't just heated by gravitational collapse. Most of that heat is actually coming from another source. So he had to also up those. And so these ages, except for Lord Kelvin's, were all minimums. And Lord Kelvin admitted during his lifetime that there were factors he didn't know which pushed up the age of the Earth considerably. And so, yeah, it's true that the science did know that the Earth wasn't 6,000 years old before radiometric dating. But it's not like we've ignored radiometric dating in order to just go with whatever Lyle made up, because that's not what's happening.
That's the thing too. They like to kind of pose this idea that it's like, people were, everything was fine when everyone was on the same page, and 6,000 years was the maximum, or maybe 10,000. I think it kind of goes. That's the general range that we get from the YECs. Mm-hmm. But then it's like there were numerous cultures with different takes on how old the Earth were, and the only thing that they really had in common with the sort of the sort of Protestant, or rather, I guess, Christian / I guess you would say Jewish, whatever the Abrahamic interpretation would be, that they were rooted in like a little bit of mythicism, right? I mean, it wasn't until some of the science guys came along and they were like, all right, let's actually see if we can get an accurate estimate on this big hunk of rock using something more than kind of what we think it is, just kind of guesstimating. Which is very cool. Like, imagine, I can't even imagine the confusion of being like, I'm going to try and figure out how old the Earth is with no one prior to you ever having done so using naturalistic means. And then you're like, shit, how do I do it? Like,
yeah, it's not an easy thing. Well, and another thing that's interesting is that this really is a uniquely Abrahamic problem, because if you say go to other places, like, as far as I know, there's no real consensus from, pre-scientific times of how old the Earth should be from someplace like, say, China. Like, it's been here for a while. I don't know. Like, we don't have a story that has this tight chronology like the Bible does. Or if you say go to India, and there are Hindu creationists, and they're not just old Earth creationists. They're like, the Earth is like 1 trillion years old, and humans have always been here. Old Earth creationists, like they're like, oh no, science is way too young.
Yeah, there are some too. You get the weird like mix of that, where you get like the Snellings, where they're like, the Earth is young, but also like the material that makes up the Earth is primordial, which is why we get such ancient ages on like meteorites and ejecta coming down and pelting the surface and some rocks on Earth, which I'm kind of like, that feels like a little bit pick and choosy.
Yeah.
But that's Snelling for you.
Yep. All right, well, let's get some more Eric in here.
Boy, yeah. And with that built-in out, I mean, gosh, that's I suppose not much different from when the weatherman tells you that you got a 40% chance of rain. Boy, he's built in and out pretty well there.
Yes.
he's going to win no matter what.
That's funny.
So,
That's funny.
Oh boy, Eric, tell me about Lucy.
Oh, good.
Australopithecus afarensis.
That's what we called her when I dated her too, just because she wasn't all that pretty. But
that's mean to Lucy.
Some light. I don't even know what you would call that. Like light misogyny, light misandry, light just rudeness. Both to Lucy and to the girlfriend.
Well, I feel like that girlfriend is entirely fictional. I feel like that's. I don't think he's referring to an actual person he dated named Lucy. I mean, he might be, but I feel like that's not the case. So
that's a little intense for him, doesn't it?
Right? Yeah. Like, I think if that was a real, because one of the things about Eric is he's always got the nice guy thing going on. Like, he very rarely actually goes in for the throat on an actual person. So
he reminds me kind of like a nice snail, He's just he's kind of cute. He's kind of non-threatening. But if you get too close, he's a little slimy.
Oh yeah, that was a joke, and we didn't laugh. Thank you, Monk Mayfair, for reminding us.
Oh, Monk Mayfair, yeah, good job, Monk Mayfair. It was so bad I didn't even catch it.
But so one thing is though that. So I actually had this discussion with someone. I think it was on a Facebook group about evolution or something. But I was pointing out that one of the ways that species can become isolated over time is when they no longer see members of other populations that might be genetically viable as potential mates, right? And basically this... Right, and so it's not because if they were to mate, they wouldn't produce viable offspring. They just are no longer inclined to because of just... They no longer find members of the opposite sex of the other population to be attractive, and so they don't have any inclination. And so, this person for some reason disagreed, and so I put up a picture of like Homo erectus, and I was like, dude, if this is your thing, I'm not going to tell you no, but I'm going to tell you it's not most people's thing. Like, most people don't find reasonable reconstructions of Homo erectus to be attractive in a sexual manner. It's just, that's just how it is. But the thing is, though, that doesn't mean that they were ugly, right? That's not what that means.
No. Yeah, oh my God! It was so. This is a funny anecdote. Is that when I was in Gombe doing that part, we were like on one of our chimp expeditions, and we were following that same, I think I've mentioned it on this channel before, but this small G group member of females, and my professor, we saw the first female of the kind of small group of 3 or 4, and I was like, oh my God, like that's incredible, like oh my God, she's beautiful. And my professor turned and he looked at me and he's like, no, that's definitely an ugly one. And I was like, okay, like we're reading the poor chimps, right? I mean, I've never personally seen like a super feminine chimp, or really a masculine chimp. They all just kind of look chimpish. So
well, that's the thing. You're cued in. You're cued into masculine and feminine features for Homo sapiens, not pan troglodytes. So,
exactly.
Although actually, I did once share as a joke a picture of a bonobo stretching, and I was like, "Oh, see, bonobos do yoga too." But there were complaints because the bonobo's breasts were too human-like, and I was like, "All right, I'll take it down."
Oh no, that's a funny thing. An interesting experiment would be I wanted to put that one very famous picture of the bonobo carrying her young on her back, and she's walking bipedally. And she's a female bonobo, and bonobos tend to have more enlarged breasts than their chimp brethren, sister, cousins, whichever, close relative, depending on, I guess, how you would want to phrase it. But I was always wondering, like, all right, if you've got a bonobo with like very clear breasts as your thumbnail, is YouTube going to catch that? Because I feel like it might, and that would be very telling. That's evolution proved.
All right, everybody, go start a new YouTube account and just try to upload female bonobos to see if you can catch the YouTube censors. Don't do it with your main channels. Do not do it with your main channel. Start a new email account for this. Send it through a VPN just in case. But Megan, very insightful, Megan Fox's giant boobs. Welcome to the internet, where non-human breasts are often found offensive by people who should know better. That absolutely. Yeah, that's a true story though. I had to be like, okay, I will not do that again. Apparently bonobos are just too darn sexy for the internet, which to be fair, they kind of are.
That's why if you were ranking like that, when primatologists are joking around and they've had like enough beers, like if you're ranking like, oh, what are the best apes, you'll get one chucklehead will be like, sexiest ape, obviously it's human, but bonobos are second, and then you're like, you're cut off for the night.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, Lucy was discovered by Donald Johanson in the Hadar Valley of Ethiopia, and you'll never guess what he was actually looking for when he discovered Lucy. He was looking for missing links. So he goes on an expedition.
What? Was that a joke? The guy laughed.
I think the gag is scientist searches for thing and finds thing, sounds suspicious. Okay.
No, that's actually a confirmation of a prediction. Because
that's
like, okay.
Oh my god, that actually makes me a little nauseous. That's incredible.
It's basically the same thing as like Tiktaalik, which is rightfully hailed as an amazing, confirmation of a prediction based on evolution, right?
Yes, precisely. Yes, it's exactly like TikTok. That's exactly what came to mind. I was like, hold on a second. Are we like dunking on predictions because it's too convenient? Like, tell that to every single paleontologist that's gone out hoping they could find precisely what Johansen and Shubin found when they went out.
Right.
Prepare to get like smacked upside the head.
And the thing is, it's not like he picked this area of Africa at random. Like, he didn't have a map of Africa and then he threw a dart at it and was like, I guess I'll check there. There were reasons to think that this might be the kind of area, because we had things like, we knew based on somewhat primitive genetic comparisons that, we were most closely related to genus Pan, and then after that, genus Gorilla, and that with Pongo being a sister group to the rest of the great apes, it seemed like since all the other great apes were concentrated in Africa, maybe Africa was a good place to check for our, ancient ancestors. Yeah.
Well, and we'd already found other kind of very, very fragmentary pieces, of course, but other, pieces of hominids, here, there, and everywhere along the East African Rift. So the whole idea was like, well, there was something hominid-ish roaming around here. Like, maybe we ought to give it a closer look.
Right.
But yeah, that's on Johansen. Whew, shouldn't have been so good at his job.
Yeah. Way to make a prediction that was later confirmed, you idiot.
Checkmate, atheists.
Basically. Wait, was Johansen even an atheist? I don't even know. I guess it doesn't matter.
No, I don't know. Well, I say no. I don't know that for sure. And I'm mostly saying no in a way that's like, it literally just doesn't matter.
Right, yeah. I mean...
who cares,
Turns out you don't have to be an atheist to be a primatologist or a paleoanthropologist or any of these things. Shocker.
Yeah, and some of our, really and truly, some of our most incredible like evolutionary biologists, primatologists, and anthropologists have had religious leanings. So like, no shade, just the thing is those individuals just understand like how to accept conventional science. It's like,
what I just
imagine
realized?
That.
I just realized Eric would be a terrible boss, because he'd be like, oh, hey, go get this done. And then you would do it. And he'd be like, what, you set out to do a task and then you accomplished it? What is wrong with you?
you're fired.
Right. Not okay.
Eric
If you don't
Eric
fail at
feels
your
like
job.
The kind of boss that would be like, if he feels like the kind of boss that would be like, you don't mind working on Thanksgiving, right? And then you're like, yes, I do mind because I specifically asked for that holiday off. But you can't actually say that because he's the boss and he's kind of got like that sickening sweet thing
he's the
going
boss
on.
from Office Space.
Basically, yes.
Okay, yeah, all right. Here we go.
Looking for a missing link, and lo and behold, he discovers his missing link, Lucy. Lucy
Shocker.
is wildly popularized. They made a movie called Lucy recently where they go back in time and they're actually seeing this ape, and you're seeing this ape-like creature. And it's interesting. Anytime you see a transitional fossil, half man, half ape, and ape man, they always get it human eyes. So they have these ape-like characteristics, but then they put white eyes, the whites of the eyes in there to make it look half ape and half human.
Oh my God. Pepper, pause it. Let's drink.
Yep. And this is something that's come up in one of my videos too.
So here's something that's really interesting for everyone out there. If you've ever seen any kind of reconstruction of a hominid, usually past Afarensis, which would be Lucy, but probably I would imagine Animensis, the Australopithecine immediately prior to Afarensis, probably would have had this as well. You'll see them reconstructed with human eyes. Now, what does that mean? When someone's like, what does it mean?
White sclerae, basically.
White sclera, the whites of the eyes. Rare, face reveal with no glasses, but the whites of the eyes.
You saw it here first, guys. Erika with no glasses. Dapper Dino exclusive. I got the scoop.
You got the scoop. Yeah, my irises are very dark, so it's very Lovecraftian when I take them off. I try not to expose people to it too often. But what I was going to say is that the silliness of creationists having an issue with white sclera in reproductions and recreations and things like that is that extant hominoids have white sclera very frequently. Yeah. And the reason why they have it, we see this in gorilla and we see this in pan. So basically our 2 or 3, if we're
I'm pretty sure I've seen a picture of an orangutan with white sclera.
Wouldn't surprise me. I haven't specifically looked at like the pongids, but that's just because I mostly have looked at the African apes and then like Asian monkeys. So orangs are a little bit out of my like realm of immediate study. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, but the reason, think of this from a perspective of what's the use of sclera. And the use of it is it allows us to gaze follow. This is why we're actually seeing an unconscious evolution in dogs for larger sclera as well, more prominent sclera with regard to the rest of the body.
It's easier to read the dog's emotion and what it's looking at.
And we like to do that. And there have actually, I believe there's actually a semi-recent paper on that it really isn't even intentional. Like we see them and we think that they're more connected with us because they can follow our gaze. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, the great apes gaze follow as well. It's very important if you're a visual species, which before you can speak, well, you're communicating primarily with sounds and with gestures, and we know that the hominoids are big on gestures. Chimpanzees have about the gesture repertoire of like a 2 to 3 year old. So they kind of know how to communicate with each other. They can point, they can make they can slap the ground, whatever. So gaze following is super important, which is why they have it. So let's stomp this one collectively, gang. Anytime you see a creationist say some dumb bullshit like that, roast them on it. Send them a picture of a hominoid with white sclera, and that will be that, hopefully.
Although I would also say, if someone showed me an Australopithecus, reconstruction where it had dark sclerae, I mean, I'm not going to complain. Like, okay. Like, I don't see a reason why they couldn't have also had that. Like,
and they will have. It's the reason. I mean, the thing is that for a species that evolved with the help of sociality in the way that humans did, it wouldn't surprise me if white sclera evolved relatively early as the norm. Which is, I think, why they're depicted with white sclera.
Yeah, I think the dark sclera would probably be an uncommon thing. But I also, I mean, if you did it, I'm saying, well, I mean, okay, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, no one would, is the stupid thing. God.
Yeah. Also, we have a question from Kakarot, which is actually a topic that I think, I know what I would say, but I want to know what you say. Aren't all apes monkeys, but not all monkeys are apes?
It depends if you're speaking in a scientific means, like if you're looking at it taxonomically or if you're speaking colloquially. Because when we speak colloquially, when we talk about monkeys, we usually mean anything prior to hominoids, like on our kind of lineage here, on the primate branch. So that would be like your catarrhines and your platyrrhines, and stopping there and going down into your cercopithecids and these cebus, attalids, things like that. But I would say, if we're speaking taxonomically, yes, that all apes are in fact monkeys because we are catarrhines, which is the scientific classification for old world monkeys.
Right.
So I would say yes, all apes are monkeys, and not all monkeys are apes. I think that's a fair thing to say, with the caveat that you're talking to someone who has a little bit of background, unless you want to just explain it to them. I mean, which is fine, you can do that.
And then Thronmulus asks, what language are you speaking?
Okay, I'll tell you this. Cercopithecids tend to be your like papiotes, like baboons and macaques and things like that, whereas attalids and cebids are going to be, they're both separate, like kind of genera. No, not genera.
Families.
Family? Yeah, families in
if it ends in id, it's a family level taxon.
I literally did not know that. You
really?
learned something new.
Well, there you go. Which is actually, I almost corrected you on pongids because that's the old family name for the great apes excluding humans. But then I was just like, it doesn't matter. She means genus Pongo.
Yeah, no, thank you for correcting me because I literally feel, I'm pretty sure I've actually just heard like primatologists do that, but I think it's usually when they're not studying orangs. Like usually you'll get like a baboon person or a macaque person and they're like, we don't really care about the grade. The grade 8 people think that they're hot shit in the primatology community, and they are, but so is everyone else because primates are all of them.
Actually, the Ark Encounter is still using the family name Pongidae because they do not want to switch to Hominidae. Oh my goodness, do they not want to?
No, I remember seeing that. And there's the stupid thing, and I said this in my chat with Apologia, but it's like there is exactly zero reason to draw the line where they draw it. At least when we're looking at the hominids. They draw it between Africanus and habilis. There is no reason to do that. Habilis's maximum brain case size was like 850, which is like well below even like almost anencephalic humans. So I'm not really sure why they're drawing it there. I'm sure they give zero explanation, but I'm actually planning on maybe going to the Creation Museum here soon.
Oh, I can tell you why. I'm very confident about why they do it there. Because habilis, it's that habilis gets the genus Homo. No one's going to refer to Australopithecus habilis. So they don't want any members of Homo being outside of there because it becomes even more inconvenient for them. And the average audience isn't going to ask about brain case volume.
Yeah. Nor will they care about postcrania, which, and I'm guilty of this too, but it's very easy
Mammal
to
people never care about the postcranium.
Yeah. But the thing is that primate postcrania is pretty derived. So you would think that being a primate person, you would care more. It's easy. Skulls are sexy. Like people like looking at skulls. They're instantly recognizable and everyone thinks they're cool.
There's a skull in the thumbnail for this video. Because I didn't know what else to put in there. I was like,
get more
Pixabay, type in skull, pick a human skull that doesn't look too cartoonish. There you go. All right, let's get a little bit more Eric in though.
Come on, tell me you knew what the eyes look like based on the bones. This is absolute conjecture. Absolute.
They found a
render.
fossilized eye with whites in it.
What? No.
I didn't read about that.
That was a joke. That was a joke. Oh my goodness.
It was a joke. That was an actual joke. I need to, you know what? I was going to go get more water, but I actually think I'm going to grab some alcohol.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
All right. Well, we'll take an intermission here. So everyone, we're going to take an intermission, and we will be back soon. We're still in an intermission. Yeah, we're muted. Oh. Oh, maybe they can hear me then. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, you could hear me that whole time. My bad. Oh, Nani, Dare. Oh, Gojira desu ka? Hai, Gojira-san. Hai.
You found the skeleton.
All right, we are back from the intermission. Thank you, Godzilla, for helping out, and also thank you, Sad Piano Music, for helping out that no one got to hear. Sorry about that. So when I go do that, I'm supposed to mute desktop and mic audio. Instead, I muted desktop and intermission audio. And wait a minute, we have a $1.99 super chat from Mothra J Disco, which means we drink for Mothra.
For Mothra.
Have to hang with one for a day. Eric or Kent? Oh, Eric.
Oh my god.
Oh,
but Dapper, you would get free tickets to Dinosaur Adventureland.
They're already free.
Is it really?
Yeah, there's no entry fee. You just have, if you're going to stay for more than a day, they make you do construction work.
Well, I think the entry fee can potentially be your life.
Well,
occasionally.
That did happen at one point. Yeah, ooh. There is a confirmed. Also, there are rumors of a child abduction from Dinosaur Adventureland. So.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that has not, as far as I know, been super confirmed. But let's just say this: one of Kent's friends, who sometimes hangs out on Dinosaur Adventureland, is on the sex offender registry for his inappropriate activity with young boys. So.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm serious. So, yeah. Overall, yes, the answer to me is... and so Mothra J Disco says that the fee is slave labor. Well, no, because you can just leave and not do the labor, right? So for me, I have a pretty strict definition of slave labor. If you can leave, and the former person who was requiring this labor of you doesn't hunt you down to bring you back, then it's not slavery. If he does, then it is.
What's the indentured servitude, like, definition, though? Is it maybe indentured servitude?
It might be indentured servitude. So for it to count as indentured servitude, you have to agree to this in the first place of your own free will. to be in this temporary condition where you are obligated to work and you're not allowed to quit. So actually joining the military is essentially indentured servitude.
Indentured servitude. Oh,
yeah.
God bless America.
Well, that's true in basically every country, because you're not allowed to just quit after you join. You don't get to just be
God bless, insert
I'm out. Right, basically. Also, for $4.99 from Vandali 1998, my niece's cat got attacked by the neighbor's dog while I was pet/house sitting. It swung it around and punctured its back leg and had to go to the hospital. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope the cat gets better.
That is so sad.
I mean, I like dogs, but I'm not going to pretend that they do not retain some of their instincts to be vicious killers, because they do.
That's the thing. So do people sometimes.
Yeah, and for $1.99, Mothra J Disco says, "But Dapper, they were just playing strip poker." Ken Hovind. Yeah, that is actually the excuse that Ken Hovind gives. Actually, no, he doesn't give that, but that was what he was accused of, is playing strip poker. And it's like,
he should have just used the Minecraft excuse. It was happening, but in Minecraft, not for real.
Yeah, no, we're not going to get too far into that, because I would like to keep the monetization on this active, but yeah.
Let's just agree that things that go on at Dinosaur Adventureland, from the science to the social aspect, are despicable, but it's on a gradient.
Yeah, but I would definitely hang out with Eric. I would go get a beer with Eric Hovind.
I would take Eric to Dinosaur Adventureland.
Oh, no, he won't go. But no, seriously, like, Eric seems like the kind of guy I wouldn't mind having a beer with, or like if I was going to have like a watch party or something at my place, where like, say there isn't a deadly plague and I can actually have people over, and Eric was like, "Oh, hey, can I come?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." As long as you don't get too preachy about it.
That's the thing about Eric, is I feel like, I don't know if Eric drinks. That's actually a very good question.
Okay, I get a Coke with him.
Yeah, but I don't know if he drinks or not, but I would imagine, because I always feel like when I watch Eric that he's got like a visage up, that he's like guarded, it'd be very interesting to see him like loosened up, I guess. And I don't know, I would be interested to kind of pick his brain a little bit.
Yeah, I think we would both end up, if we had to make a choice, who are you going to hang out with for a day? Eric Hovind. I think I could actually have a good time hanging out with Eric Hovind. I don't think that's the case for Kent.
Yeah, Kent, yeah.
Well, and one of the reasons I say that is, did you see the Paul's conversation with Eric?
It was actually
they had fun in that, as far as I can tell. I mean, I can ask Paul at some other point if he actually was having fun. But it seemed like they were both enjoying the conversation. I didn't have fun talking to Ken Hovind. I had fun after the fact, making fun of how inept he was. But during the conversation, it wasn't fun. I don't know that anyone has fun talking to Kent. It seems like even the people at Dinosaur Adventureland barely do.
There's a powerful air of condescension around Kent.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you agree with him or not, it's still there.
For $2 from Atheist Jr., Eric equals overexcited Christian camp counselor energy. Yeah, that's fair. Having been to some Christian camps, I can say that's probably accurate. All right, let's
big camp counselor vibes.
Let's get some more actual Eric in here, though.
Oh, I'm blown away. So here's what happens. Daniel Hansen discovers a knee joint, and the knee joint has an angled, the hip joint, and it's got an angled...
I'm going to drink for him correcting himself there, because I thought he was going into a way stupider area, so...
I'm going to make a science prediction, as Kent likes to say, and I'm just going to pose that he's probably going to bring up the pelvis.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he will.
It's just going to be the pelvis. It's going to be a pelvis conversation. Well, and it had no feet conversation.
Oh, and Dave Dallafiore, sorry, I almost said Dallafiore, but for $1.99 says, anyone is better than Matt Powell. Oh, yeah, it's a pretty close thing between Kent and Matt Powell, but yeah. Oh, and $10 from Speed of Sound of Gravity, who says, this is from my son's kidney transplant GoFundMe, but you guys really rock, and I have twins, so... Well, tell your son I said thank you. That might be the darkest super chat I've ever received. What do you mean, might be? That definitely is.
Like the idea too that it's like $10 seems like it's a lot of money to pull from this GoFundMe, meaning he was going for a very cheap kidney.
we got a knockoff watch kidney from China.
Yeah.
It's an orangutan kidney, but it might work, you know. Oh man. Thank you, Speed of Sound of Gravity. I'm the exact amount of boozy to make that be awesome. So
I really like
all right, here we go.
Femur. Well, apes typically have a straight femur, so the ball and socket joint, the ball that goes out, then the femur goes down. It's kind of a 90-degree angle. Humans have a less than 90-degree angle because our hips are a little bit wider than where our knees are at, so our bones actually angle into the knees, and this is good for upright walking because when you walk, if you have a problem, like if you have to have both legs in a cast or something like that, and you got to waddle, you'll notice that you kind of waddle back and forth. Like if you ever see a chimp waddle in a video, when they walk, they have to kind of bounce back and forth, waddle back and forth because their hip bones are straight.
You know what? I'm going to drink because that's actually a decently accurate description of why the human, I guess, sacral and limb anatomy is as it is.
And I also make that 2 sips because he is correct on the general angle for chimpanzees. I would actually even say that it's slightly greater than 90 degrees between the femoral head and the epiphysis.
All right.
Long bone
well, there we go. I just took 1 sip. I'll take a second now. So, you know what, Eric? Good job. That is broadly accurate. You got the biomechanics about right. So, yeah. Oh, and TD Lane said that joke was so dark it fits in Warhammer. Yeah, basically. Oh man! If you guys ever want to, read some of the darkest sci-fi you're ever gonna go read some Warhammer 40k books from like the early 2000s. It gets
That's
dark.
When they. It's the Wild West.
Well, let's just say this. If I were to describe the plot of the Ultramarines trilogy, I would not be able to keep this video up.
That monetization is gone.
No, I don't mean the monetization is gone. I would have to take the video down to avoid a community guideline strike if I describe the plot of that trilogy.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, for the morbidly curious, go out, let us know. Read the wiki and let us know.
So, yeah, it's if you want some dark fiction, early 2000s Warhammer 40,000, you literally cannot talk about that plot in any detail on YouTube without without opening yourself to a community guideline strike. So, yeah.
Now, Dapper, you're tantalizing everyone.
Eric, when we're off the air, if you want to know more, I'll tell you more, but you might not want to. But here we go.
Oh my god.
Well, humans are angled. They said, look at this. This thing has an angled femur. It must be evolving into a human. The knee joint that was discovered was 1.5 miles away from the femur, from the rest of the fossil. So, why you would call that Lucy's knee, I have no idea. It doesn't make sense.
No one is calling that knee Lucy's knee except for creationists misrepresenting the find.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a mile is also just not. It's just not the distance.
I mean, I don't know about the distance, but I do know that it was far enough away that it was not associated as the same specimen as Lucy. But the thing is, this is one of the things that creationists do, is they pick whichever most famous fossil there is of a particular hominin species, and then they just pretend that that's like the only specimen. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Lucy is Australia. Right. Also, and would Erika be down for doing a part 4 of touring the Creationist Museum for $4.99 from Eric the Tyrannoceratops? I mean, I would be interested in you being there. Okay. So one thing is,
Dapper's going to get us into indentured servitude for doing the censoring of the young boy.
Well, actually, Eric had said that he would be willing to learn how to do it and then to follow through on another episode. So that's a big.
You're a star.
That's a big offer. So
It's a big win.
Yeah.
Big win.
And so in case anyone doesn't know, the reason that I'm not keen on doing a lot of those is because censoring that little kid's face took about 8 hours last time I did it to make sure that I always got his face and that his face wasn't there, because I do not want him to be easily identifiable. Not just because of YouTube's various, legal troubles with kids being on YouTube, but also because I don't want to be the cause of any embarrassment for this kid. This is an innocent kid who, by the way, is often the best thing about the videos. He's great.
We love him.
Because he's always giving answers that the guy leading the tour doesn't actually want, and sometimes they're actually the correct answer. And the guy's like, no.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this kid is rolling on like childhood intuition too. So it's like that should really poke a bunch of holes into Kent's idea of like a 5-year-old could figure it out, right?
Right. And Icarus says, but Dapper, he's on YouTube already. Yes, but he's on YouTube with people who have given permission for him to be on YouTube, who were legally competent to do so.
Right. We don't want to take hold of that, and also roasting a kid online is it's punching down.
Oh yeah, so that's the thing. Like, for instance, I have a video where 2 of my nieces and 1 of my nephews are in there, and I use some of their first names, and the reason I feel comfortable with that is because I asked their parents first. And so
that's why we remember the it used to be on commercials all the time. It's like, get your parent or guardian to accompany you onto the internet. I didn't do that, and look what happened to me.
Right. So it's the whole kid thing is a tricky thing legally, morally. So I censor his face, and it's also why I don't link to the original videos and the videos that he's in, because I don't want to be the cause of some kid becoming infamous on the internet for having been in silly creationist videos. That's not going to be my thing.
Sure.
So
Dapper is being morally consistent on this one.
Well, thank you. All right, let's get a little bit more Eric in here.
Don't think this is from the same animal. Donald Johansson himself is later quoted as saying, "Lucy has really been dethroned. This is not what we thought it was." Lucy, based on the fossil of the skull that was discovered, apes have this little thread-like nerve that goes in at the base of the spine that goes out to the throat and stuff to be able to speak. And apes have the hardware, but they just don't have a big enough hole at the base of the spine there, or the base of the skull.
Okay, hold on. Is Eric saying that non-human apes have too small of a foramen magnum to be able to speak? Is that the point he's making?
I genuinely think it is, and I can't believe that I'm hearing this after he got like biomechanics right.
Okay, I'm taking a drink for that, and then we have a couple more super chats. Okay, for $4.99 from Vandalia 1998. Sorry. If Erika is free this Saturday, does she want to join Eric, me, and Dapper if they're still free for the 4th of July anniversary podcast?
I need to see if my folks are doing anything. We usually do stuff on the 4th, so let me check.
Okay. I don't foresee it being a problem. So yeah. Let's see. Also, for $2.99 dollary dues from Ian Chen. Congrats on your engagement, Erika. Married life rock. Although I think he might mean rocks.
I think that is what he does mean. But yes, I am engaged. I'm very excited. I'm actually not wearing my ring right now because when I type, it hasn't been sized, so it starts sliding down my fingers, and then it's like I know I'm a very forgetful person, and I'm just petrified that I'm going to lose it somewhere.
He didn't try to find a sneaky way to get your ring size beforehand?
No, the thing is that he got it from my mom, but my mom was also like, you should probably play it safe because I'm not actually sure what the ring size is, and so that's how it kind of ended up.
Got it.
So yeah, it's been a complicated ordeal, but he's almost as anal about it as I am. Like he'll be like, hey, so it's like, you sure you want to be wearing that ring when it's like going to be sliding off your finger? And I'm like, yes, I am sure about it. It's my ring.
Also, I just had an idea. I'll bet the S put it over the blue tier of super chats into the green tier. I bet that's why Ian Chen did that. Because if he added that S, they'd be like, "Oh, give us $3 more," because YouTube is like that.
Oh, classic.
Nice. Yeah, YouTube is pretty stingy with the super chat length stuff. So,
Well, I thought I would go ahead and share this with everyone because I went ahead and I pulled up a stratigraphic map. I haven't actually read all the way through it yet, but for the Hadar region with Australopithecus afarensis. And I'm going to go ahead and actually, instead of reading it, I'm just going to post it in the chat so everyone else can go and read it. But it's got some very interesting things to say about the over 200 specimens that we have found, 216 hominid specimens from the site. So
you think any of them might have had knees associated with sufficient other anatomy to conclusively conclude this is the same species? Anything that ever happened?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Dapper, could we be so lucky?
I know. So that's the thing. Is it's like it's not like we just have to guess that this knee is associated with the same species as Lucy. We have enough specimens of her species. So
this isn't guesswork. Not to mention the fact that we also have the Dakika child and the Dakika? Yeah, Dakika child, not Tong. My mistake. And the maybe it is Tong. Wait, hold on, guys. Hold on.
You know better than me.
I always mix the two up. Oh, that's right. Okay, it is Dakika. So there are two very excellently preserved specimens from Africanus and Afarensis, and they're both called like the something child, and so I always mix them up. It's like the Tong child is Africanus and the Dakika child is Afarensis, and I always mix them up in my head.
And
it's like my... Go ahead.
It doesn't help that the species names are so similar anyway. They basically both mean the same thing. It's like, oh, like it's the African one. Yeah, well, they're both from Africa, damn it.
Afarensis, Africanus, and for good measure, Animensis.
Yeah, like my goodness. Could you guys, like, look, scientists kind of suck at naming things, guys. I don't know if you know this, but it's
not known for being the creative types.
Well, unless you get to quarks, right? Where we have like strange and charm quarks. Because, okay,
yeah,
sure.
I do like those. Where were those guys when it comes to naming the hominids? Also, just a walking fish. Tongchild was killed by a bird, right? Yes, it was killed by a bird. An unknown ratite? No, wait, no. Bird of prey.
Yeah, well...
Dapper, ratites are ostriches and emus, yes?
Oh, well, quick, Godzilla? So ratites, which, by the way, it's still not clear if they are actually a natural group, but if they are, they include the ostrich, the emu, and the rhea, as well as a few extinct forms, but that's not true.
And things like that.
Yeah.
Elephant bird.
Yeah, so, yeah, I believe the elephant bird and the moas were also ratites. But, also, the tinamou is in a slightly wider group called paleonates, which is defined by various jaw characteristics. And so tinamous, which are the only still flighted paleonate birds, are also related to the ratites. Unless, of course, ratites aren't a real thing, in which case, they're still all paleonates, but exactly who's more closely related to whom is a little up in the air.
Yeah. What is the... I'm literally blanking here. So birds of prey, what is our taxonomic name for them?
So there are some birds of prey there are different groups, like falconiforms are probably the closest that we're going to get to include most of them, but they are in a clade with psittaciformes in the so psittaciformes includes birds of prey and parrots, and then if I remember the term correctly, it's falconiformes is the group that includes most of the things that we call birds of prey. So I believe that's it, but I would honestly have to double check. Don't take my word on that. Do your own research.
Okay. Literally, I'm an idiot. The word raptor was what I was looking for. Thank you, Monk Mayfair. And then Megan Fox's giant boob says accipitriforms?
Oh, that is it. It's accipitriformes. And the thing is, I actually point that out in one of my videos, but I cannot remember that word for the life of me.
Yeah, listen, I literally just couldn't remember raptors, so you get a pass. But yeah, the interesting thing about the bird of prey that got the Tong child is that it was figured out by looking at the skull cap of the Tong child, which has 2 big puncture marks, and by looking at, like, to my knowledge, I don't think we actually even have like the genera of the species that killed the Tong child. Birds are like weirdly notorious, specifically in East Africa, where it's like actually kind of hard to get something to fossilize, for giving us much information and leaving many things behind.
Also, I'm going to have to point out, take that, humans, from the dinosaurs. All right, let's get a little more Eric in here. And yeah, I'm sorry for getting that one. Like I said when I was saying it, like I was not very confident about that one because honestly, raptors, like modern raptors, it's one of those areas I just haven't read much on. I don't know. For some reason, maybe I'll fix that. But here we go.
For the nerve to go through to actually bring about communication. So while apes have, I guess you could say, like Dr. Charles Jackson says, he says they have the hardware, they just don't have the software to make that work.
I'm pretty sure that's actually the exact opposite, because if I remember correctly, experiments with numerous great apes have shown that actually great apes do have some capacity for abstract language use, but in fact, they do not have the physical vocal anatomy to create the speech sounds that humans do.
It's actually a combination of both. So a recent study that I believe came out in 2019 looked at macaques, and they essentially were looking at the sounds that they could make with their lips. They would, kind of prompt them to make a wide variety of sounds, and then using like facial tracking technology, they figured out, okay, what's the range that they can make? And it has a lot to do with how they can move their lips, and it has a lot to do with how they can move their tongue as far as making the physical sounds goes. A little bit to do with like the larynx and things like that. But Eric is partially right in that it was discovered in at least macaques, in these macaques, that they actually lack a decent portion of the software, so to speak, required for language in the same way that the hominoids have, right? And it's obviously very reduced in like genus Pan and Pongo and Gorilla, which kind of, it's a little bit interesting, right? Because we see in the hominids that the postcrania becomes derived way earlier than the skull like catches up, basically. So, because the hypothesis was for a long time, all right, well, or not the hypothesis, the battle of the hypotheses for a long time was like, all right, well, did the big brain evolve first? Did we have like arboreal apes with large brains, or was it bipedality that evolved first? And it makes sense to look at that because it's like obviously the skull and the vertebral column are like, pretty related to one another.
And those are the two big differences between, humans and other apes is
especially like gross anatomy speaking.
Yeah, they're weirdly smart and they walk on two legs all the time.
Right, which is, even bonobos, which like they walk upright for like 2%, I think, of like their locomotion for like an activity budget. But most great apes will walk on two legs when they're like in the water, which is very cute. You should look up videos of that. Yeah. But yeah, they were trying to figure out which came first, and it was actually with afarensis that we like everyone kind of, and like Raymond Dart and the like everyone kind of moved over to the side where they're like, all right, well, it's looking like bipedality is kind of what happened first because we have all of this postcrania that indicates something is walking around on two legs and holding its weight underneath it, and yet we've got this skull that has a brain case like the size of a chimp's. I mean, we're looking at 350-400 at the Australopithecines. That's to say nothing of the Ardipiths and Sahelanthropus and Auroran, all three of which had are already starting to have the inklings of like habitual bipedality.
Right.
So it's super interesting, like when we look at it from that perspective. The answer, as usual with science, it's like you have scientists who like to take like hardline stances on like, well, what keeps apes from speaking is definitely the brain, or what keeps apes from speaking is definitely the the actual gross anatomy of the face and of the throat.
Yeah.
It's both. It's both.
And I want to answer a question quick from Kakarot. Are there any animals currently declared extinct that might still have small existing populations? And I believe he means e.g. the thylacine. So for the thylacine, I'm going to say almost certainly not. But it is almost certainly the case that some of the species that have been declared extinct do have small populations. Because every once in a while we do find a populations of species that have been declared extinct. For instance, I think one of the most famous examples was the black-footed ferret in North America. They were considered to be extinct for a while, and then we found populations of them. I'm like, okay, well, I guess they're not extinct. So,
the Florida panther was pretty close to that too, wasn't it?
Which one? Sorry.
The Florida panther, pretty close. Like they were like, yeah, we think it might be extinct, and then they're like, oh shit, there's actually 40 of them left.
I am not sure about that one. I don't know that I've looked into the Florida panther, but you may. I mean, I see no reason to dispute that. So yes, the answer is there are almost certainly some species that have been declared extinct that are not actually extinct and could even form some kind of a comeback. So, for instance, I believe in the case of the black-footed ferret, they actually discovered that there's actually probably enough of them that while they will suffer from the genetic bottleneck for, millennia to come, if they don't go extinct, they could probably make a recovery. So, and here
I am holding out hope for our I'm holding out hope for our thylacines. Wouldn't that be so cool?
It would be very cool, but they are such a large animal and it has been such a long time since there's been a confirmed sighting that it seems extremely unlikely.
I'm not optimistic, but I'm hoping beyond hope. The sad thing is, even if we did find a thylacine, like the population is functionally extinct regardless.
Yeah, and it's been so long.
Extraordinary oversight by pretty much everyone.
Even then, I'm not sure they have the genetic diversity. They would have the genetic diversity to make a comeback. It's sort of like I told. So a friend of mine told me something rather depressing, and I knew that she was a Dark Crystal fan. I was like, here's something else depressing. If Jen and Kira are the only surviving Gelflings, that's not enough genetic diversity to cause the species to come back, so they're doomed to extinction anyway.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, thanks. And I was like, well, you told me something depressing. I tell you something depressing. There you go. Yeah. So let's get some more.
That's the bummer. And the Hainan gibbons on Hainan Island in China are facing something very, very similar. I think the current count. So the main Hainan gibbon expert, like globally right now, she's actually a PhD student, Jess Bryan, I think, Jess something. She spoke at my university this past year, and she was like, "Yeah, there's like 32 of them left."
Oh, oof, like, no, that's
like it's really not good. But the good news is that the group of 32 is like a perfectly fissioned group of two ancestral populations from like centuries ago. So they're remarkably diverse genetically. She's like, if we could get them to breed like exclusively across those lines, maybe.
Yeah.
But even then, like the second, it's going to be like cheetahs, right? Like the second there's any kind of disease that hits that population, they're doomed, which is very, very sad.
And Mark Von Wisco is, he's hoping for the ivory-billed woodpecker. I don't know enough about it to say for sure if that's a reasonable possibility, but I mean, small birds are the kinds of things that are hard to spot, so you never know.
If anything is going to be, like, if it's going to be anything, it's going to be something small.
Yeah, large-bodied carnivores are kind of hard to hide. Right?
Exactly.
But let's get some more Eric in here.
And Lucy, the more studies we've done just show that she is a tree-climbing monkey. That's all. That's all she ever was. Yet when they draw pictures of Lucy...
Yeah.
I'm going to very quickly, run through this because, no, Lucy was not an obligate quadrupedal, or arboreal quadruped, rather. So a couple of key points have to do with, of course, the knee, which is valgus in nature. The feet that we have from other Afarensis specimens have a very rigid midfoot, which suggests that they were indeed walking bipedally. But interestingly enough, the way that their longitudinal arch, or the big toe of the big foot, kind of coordinates with that midfoot, suggests that they probably were a little bit awkward when they were walking on the ground. So the current thinking is that they're moving from sparse woodland to sparse woodland and using the trees for nesting, and then hanging out on the ground for most of their for a lot of their other time. One of the biggies that you'll notice Eric hasn't mentioned here, and for good reason, for his case anyways, is the foramen magnum, which is just a dead ringer for an obligate biped. Nothing habitual about it. And the thing is that they like to be like, we can't get a good read on the foramen magnum because Lucy's skull was cracked into a billion pieces. And to that I say, all of you out there in the chat, look up a picture of the Dakika child's skull, which was actually preserved with the vertebral column still attached to the skull.
Nice.
Which is just incredible. And of course, to that, they're like, sometimes juveniles hold a more, upright stance than adults do. And then you're like, you idiot, it's not just that alone. And lastly, it was her bowl-shaped pelvis, which was, of course, reconstructed. because in its original position, which of course they're claiming, well, they reconstructed it from being a quadrupedal look to being a bipedal look. But in the quadrupedal look, it literally couldn't have locomoted in any way. It was in an anatomically impossible position. So no, Eric, we know for a fact that Afarensis was not a quadruped, was not an obligate arboreal quadruped.
Yeah.
At the very least, a habitual biped.
So if I remember correctly, in the original Lucy unreconstructed pelvis, didn't the end point of the left, what was it, ilium, go past the center point of the body?
Yes, and the acetabulum was like wonky.
Yeah, that's not how things grow. You cannot do that. It's anatomically impossible. I mean,
it was the notion that the reconstruction was not warranted is absolutely absurd.
Yeah. So
and also I call nonsense on that claim by Eric that Johansson is like, Lucy's been dethroned, because I very much, if he did make that quote, which I don't know if he did or didn't, I would wager that it's probably in effect to the fact that we have Africanus, which there is a bit of dispute on whether or not the human stock emerged from the Africanus line, the Afarensis line.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get a little bit more Eric in here, because we're getting really close to the end of this, so.
I know,
they put human hands and human feet on Lucy, although no feet bone were discovered at all. Again, it's all
for Lucy. But Erika, what do you think? Yes or no? Were hands and feet discovered for other members of Lucy's species?
100%, and not just hands and feet, but like dozens upon dozens of metatarsals and metacarpals and phalanges and ankle bones, just anything you could ask for with regard to how an organism is getting around, because the feet are very important, and as are the hands, right? Because if the hands, look like ours, where there's not like a very good locking mechanism, our kind of fingers are a bit dainty in comparison to those of like a chimpanzee or maybe a gorilla. The idea that we're just looking at Lucy and calling it a day, which is what creationists think we do, it makes me want to throw myself into oncoming traffic, because this is the same talking point over and over and over again.
And for $2, T. Lane says Lucy could walk with original pelvis because miracle. Yeah, sure.
True.
But I kind of look at it like this. Like, okay, there are a lot of Homo sapiens skeletons in the world that are extant, right? Like, just go to the catacombs in France. You can find any bone you need. Okay, so let's say you found some aliens were given a sample of one of each bone in the human skeleton, but each one comes from a different individual. Do you think they could get a decent view of how the human skeleton was put together if they had one of every single bone, even if they didn't all quite easily fit together? Of course.
100%.
Yeah.
The only reason these guys have a problem with it is because, like, in their heads, they're dealing with that weird insurgenesis hyper-evolution where, like, literally between weeks, you've got something that's like an Australopithecine, and then the next week, you've got something that looks like, a genus Homo, right? Well, of course, I don't think humans evolved, but assume, you get what I'm saying. Like, you get something more derived very shortly after something that is very basal. But these guys are separated by geologic time.
Right. Actually, speaking of that hyperevolution, so in case you guys don't know who Dr. Stan Cardinal is, he is a virologist and geneticist that Eric and I and T.D. Lane and several other people like Corporal Anon and whatever, and RJ are all talking. We all talk. And he did some math, and just to account for feline diversity after the Noah's Ark thing, according to the creationist model, you need to be able to speciate feline species within 8 generations, according to the AIG hyperspeciation. So,
oh my god, that was a mistake by AIG to put that out there for all of us to see.
Yeah, we did the math, and assuming generous generation times and speciation rates, you need to be able to completely speciate in 8 generations. It's just crazy. Like 8
It's the most absurd thing you've ever heard.
Yeah. So basically, my family tree has been traced back more than 10 generations. So according to AIG's model, people that I can trace my ancestry back to should be so distinct from me that they should be recognizably a different species. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you that that's not the case. If you look at bones of humans from 10 generations ago, they are essentially indistinguishable from the bones of people right now. There has not been any speciation events in humans in the last 8 generations.
Consider the fact that, like, with concentrated efforts of artificial selection, it still takes dozens and dozens of generations to get anything close to what you want to see.
Yeah. Oh, and Just a Walking Fish said that he did the math, and Proboscideans need about 1.5 generations. Yeah, that sounds about right for Proboscideans with their 2-year gestation periods.
Oh my god, I would actually love to see that, to have like a look at that math. That would be insane.
That would be pretty awesome. Put that in a video. I assume that's why you did it, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah, so yeah, it's like when you actually do the math on what would it take to do this speciation in terms of generation time, you're like, oh, well, that's insane. So basically an elephant could give birth to a member of a different species. Okay, yeah, sure, that makes sense. But let's get some more Eric. Here we go.
Artistic imagination taking place to try to convince people that evolution is true. And that's what you have to do. If you don't have real scientific evidence, you are now forced to conjure up some evidence. So if that takes some artistic, talent, that's fine, as long as we don't have to believe in God.
No, it has nothing to do with believing this. Okay, I'm going to drink for a second, because
that one,
I really
I know
hate
that
this.
one pisses you off.
It really does. Because creationists always imagine that their intellectual opponents are atheists, and exclusively atheists. But it's not true. In fact, one of the most famous evolutionary biologists, the one who really drove home just how important evolution is to biology, was Theodosius Dobzhansky, who was a devout Russian Orthodox man. He was not an atheist. He would be extremely unhappy if you characterized him as such. And part of that is that to be a devout Russian Orthodox man in the I believe it was the early 80s when he said this, was not an easy thing to be. Because you were living in a... Oh, Godzilla. Because he would have had to deal with pretty heavy persecution from the government against Russian Orthodoxy. Now, granted, it wasn't nearly as rough as the persecution from, say, the Eastern Catholic churches that existed in Russia at the time. And that's still an ongoing thing that I don't want to get into because history doesn't really matter. But, so, sure, he wasn't facing the strictest persecution he could have. But let me just tell you, it's not easy to be a devout professional scientist in the early 80s and be Russian Orthodox. It's just not. So, it really bugs me.
No. I mean, Jack Horner is the same exact way.
Mm-hmm.
The dude is a Pentecostal.
Yeah, he's a pastor. He's an actual preacher. So
yeah, Jack Horner's amazing.
It really bugs me, and I'm not saying this because I feel like, oh, like you should be religious or not, but you have to treat your intellectual opponents honestly if you want to actually engage with them. And the basic fact is that no, the opponents to creationism are not just uniformly atheists. Many of them are religious, and you do not get to simply ignore that. It's not okay.
It's also just a lack of standardization.
Yeah. So sorry, that is one of my, I really hate it when creationists generalize their intellectual opponents as just, oh, it's atheists. They just don't want to believe in God. Because it is so obviously false. But, so Vesterfrey says, off topic, could you ask Erika, I'm wondering back in the 70s, there was a debate on arboreal hypothesis versus visual predation leading to early primates. What is the current status? I do not even know what that means. Do you know that?
I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, the current consensus is, again, that it's it's, as it classically is, a combination of factors, right? Like, it's very rare. This is, if I'm remembering correctly, this is kind of the idea of like, all right, well, what brought us down from the trees,
Right.
You see what I mean? Like, is it tell me if I'm correct on that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, also, we have a $4.99 super chat giving us a correction, which thank you. Which says, congratulations on getting engaged. This is from Eric the Tyrannoceratops. It says, congratulations on getting engaged, Erica, with some celebration emojis. By the way, Robert Bacher is the preacher, and Jack Horner is an atheist. Okay, yeah, we reversed that one, Jack. It was.
Oh, we both screwed that one up. That was I think I started saying, and I was like confident, and then you were like, "Oh yeah, okay,
yeah." No, Hey, look. Like I've said consistently, I screw things up. Correct me. I am not afraid of being like, yeah, I got that wrong. So thank you very much, Eric.
No, not at all.
I really appreciate that. And also, hello, Brainbug. Nice to see you here. But let's get a little bit more Eric in.
And keep and save this idea of evolution.
Yeah, and so Mary Leakey, apparently where they got the idea of the human feet is she apparently found human footprints, about 1,000 miles away, and those footprints were radiometrically dated. Is that even a word, metrically? Anyway, dated 3.66 million years old. Of course. And so it's like, well, I guess if we have these human footprints, they're dated around the same time as supposedly Lucy. That means she must have had human feet.
Okay. So these are the Laetoli prints. I'm extremely confident. And no.
Sounds to me like Laetoli.
Yeah, that's not the only reason that we put human-like feet on reconstructions of. It's Australopithecus afarensis for Lucy, right?
Afarensis is Lucy.
Okay, I always get those afarensis and Africanus mixed up, so thank you. But
no problem.
We actually have fossils of the foot bones of Australopithecus afarensis. It's not just the Laetoli prints. The Laetoli prints confirm what we otherwise know from fossils. Or from actual fossils, because the fossil fossils, because the footprints are ichnofossils, which is the term for things like trackways and other such things that aren't actually physical remains of the organism itself, but marks that they made in the environment. So there's your new word for the day.
So two things. One, I quickly Googled what Vesta was talking about, and I was actually completely off. It's actually for the emergence of the order of primates. So essentially it's like, what are we looking at with regard to like Purgatorius emerging? Like, was it the visual predation hypothesis? So like searching for bugs and things like that for the change, or was it more of the arboreality, like living up in the tree? Like, were they living up in the trees to avoid predators, or were they living up in the trees to hunt bugs? And based off of, if I'm remembering correctly, the teeth and the ankle bones, I believe arboreality is currently considered to be the primary driver. Plus you have the added bonus of being up off the ground and away from the predators that survived the Cretaceous extinction. With regard to Laetoli footprints, there's an excellent study out there. I bring this one up all the time because it's so dang cool. But one of the reasons why we know the Laetoli footprints were not made by a human, despite the fact that they look very human, actually, according to the discoverers of the tracks, were even like, wow, these look remarkably human-like, not human, but human-like, because the helix or big toe was pretty in line, was actually. Okay, let me just tell you this study. This is very cool. So they basically took a bunch of hunter-gatherer individuals out to an area with like silt and ash and clay, and they had them walk across, and then they took plaster casts of the imprints. Then they did the same thing with chimpanzees, probably in a lab though for them. And then they looked at the weight distribution and watched the biomechanics, or video recorded the biomechanics, and like came up with models for how weight is distributed and push off and things like that, gait, distance between the tracks. And basically what they found is that the Laetoli prints are almost precisely intermediate between chimpanzees and modern hunter-gatherers.
Nice.
And also the tracks are very small. Like, so before people are like, well, or before creationists rather are like, well, humans were different before the fall or whatever drivel we're usually getting. But they're very small. They're much smaller than anatomically modern human prints as well, because, and while evolution isn't necessarily bigger equals better, our species, our lineage rather, has been getting steadily larger through the ages.
Okay.
So I'll link that in the chat because I think it's so good. It's such a dang good study. But yes, also, as you said and as TD said in the chat, we also just have the feet. Like,
yeah, they physically exist. We've got them. So real quick, Monk Mayfair says, Dapper Dino, you need more brain lubricant, C2H5OH, which, by the way, is the chemical formula for ethanol. You're not wrong there. Also, Eric the Tyrannoceratops super chats for $1.99. What are you two's favorite movies?
I can go first on that. My favorite movie is probably The Shawshank Redemption. I know that's a little bit basic, I guess. I also really like Spirited Away, and I like The Prestige. I like all of the Planet of the Apes movies, old and new, as I'm sure comes to a surprise to absolutely no one. And I love How to Train Your Dragon. I think that's movie's absolutely adorable. And yeah, I think that's most of them.
So
I like Interstellar.
Oh, sorry, what was the last one?
I liked Interstellar as well.
Oh, yeah,
I know
Interstellar
that's also kind of basic.
Interstellar was a lot of fun. So I often will, it's sort of a mood-dependent thing for me. So right now, I'm probably leaning towards the Maltese Falcon. Not the original one, the second one that was made with Humphrey Bogart that was basically just the book put on film. It's absolutely excellent. If you have not seen the Maltese Falcon, go watch it. Not the first one that was done in, I think the 20s or some craziness like that. Like the one that's a little bit later. Humphrey Bogart's in it. I've read the book and then I watched the movie, and almost every single line of dialogue in the movie is just straight out of the book, and it's excellent. Yeah.
For you, something is an old movie fan, anyways.
Also, well, I do like old movies, yeah. Also, one of the things that I love is towards the end, there's a female character who tries to be the damsel in distress, but she's been an absolute ass the entire movie, and the main character is just like, no, I'm gonna let the cops take you away. And she's like, but I love you. Why don't you take the fall for it? He's just like, nah, just no, I'm not playing into the stereotype. And you can tell that this is this character's first time ever having been refused by a man who she has professed some kind of romantic interest to, because that's been her main MO the whole movie, is she's just manipulating people by feigning some kind of relationship. And this guy is the first person to ever figure that out and just be like, no, you got nothing. So it's like yeah, exactly. And clearly this has never happened to her before. And so it's a fun scene to watch. So I highly recommend watching. Actually, RJ says actually it's a second remake. Really? My goodness. Okay, so I guess there have been 3 of the Maltese Falcons, and the one I'm referring to is the third one. So I did not know that. But also, if you're interested in mystery novels, the Maltese Falcon is a fun one. Sorry, what?
RJ's playing the correction king in the chat.
I mean,
he roasted me for forgetting the word raptor, and now he's roasting you too.
It's not like that isn't his job or anything. I mean, that's what we keep RJ around for, is to make sure that we get things exactly correct.
That is what we keep RJ around for, that's true.
Yeah, so thank you very much, RJ. Again, thank you for correcting me. It's the Humphrey Bogart Maltese Falcon. I also sometimes say the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston is one of my favorites. Okay. Jurassic Park is one of my favorites. Jaws is one of my favorites. There might be a Spielberg kind of thing going on there. I don't know. But the Maltese Falcon is probably one of my most common favorites that I give. It's just excellent. Go watch it. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Eric.
I guess also her brain size, her skull capacity for a brain, 450 cc's, which is really small. She was.
I just want to point out, it's not really small. It's really small compared to a human. Compared to your average mammal, it's actually pretty darn big. But
it's characteristic of primates is large brain to body ratio.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, what do you expect with these guys? We've got a bipedal organism that has a small brain, thus again fulfilling a prediction of evolution. But
Right.
whatever.
It's a little ape.
Yeah, a tiny ape. And here's another thing that's just interesting
it is
about
an ape. Good job.
all of these.
A quick drink, because it's an ape. Good job.
And like I said, go to searchcreation.org and you can just type missing links and you get a whole list of ones that have come up and get the truth about them. But here's one thing I like to point out. If you're trying to use these as evidence of evolution, well, all I have to do, if we took this to court of law, all I would have to do is ask the question, how many offspring did the animals that were alive that had those bones, how many offspring did they produce? How do you know if it had any?
Dapper.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, this is just Kent's argument.
It's one of Kent's worst arguments.
His worst. Also, in a court of law, it's Miller versus Dover. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
What are you talking about in a court of law? This was settled in a court of law.
In favor of evolution.
Oh my God.
So, okay.
In favor of this was
I'm going to go through okay, so if you want a fuller explanation of this, there was a conversation that I had with Jackson and Kakarot, who I think is still in the chat, and myself was there, and this was, I believe, I think it was on the Great Debate Community channel, because Steve McRae was there. It might have been on the Steve McRae channel. I'm not sure. But anyway, it was with Dr. McLeod, who is a dentist, who was on the Texas Board of Education, and who is a young Earth creationist. I got him to stop using this argument. He said, after I gave him a description, he said, I will no longer use this argument. So I'm going to try and do a quick summary. Basically, because the fossil record is somewhat spotty, we can never be sure that what we have found that is morphologically transitional between different species is actually the ancestor species of the later species, or even technically the descendant species of the particular more basal species. I almost said primitive, but gonna go with basal, because that's the thing.
That's the good thing. That's the thing now.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that the existence of various populations, including multiple species of morphologically similar organisms, is predicted by evolution, because chances are more than one species is undergoing similar selection pressures at the same time in the environment. So what we expect to see is morphologically intermediate organisms as a prediction of evolution. We don't have to know that the particular fossil specimen ever reproduced, because one, even if it didn't, it was a member of a population that was reproducing at the time, nor do we have to know that it was a member of a species that was directly ancestral to later species, because all species are members of larger groups that exist. Now, you might get weird outliers, like right now, the tuataras, there's two species of tuataras, and they're the only sphenacodons in the entire world as far as anyone can tell. And they're weird outliers. But if you go back not too far in geological history, you find additional sphenacodon, or sphenacodon? Yeah, I think that's it. Look, there's been booze. I can't worry right now. But yeah, so we because populations always exist, if there's an individual, they're part of a population. And even if you're going to say, oh, maybe it was the last ever, Australopithecus afarensis that ever existed. It's like, okay, but she came from a population. Like, there is a previous population that existed. So we know there's a population of reproducing individuals that are like this. And there are going to be sister populations, because there always are. Right? So we do not need to know that this particular specimen or even this species gave rise to modern descendants, or any descendants. And for $4.99 from Eric... sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. At least the argument isn't as far.
For $4.99 from Eric the Tyrannoceratops, at least the argument isn't as bad as Flat Earther telling me that jumping disproves gravity, facepalm emoji. Yeah, that's...
in there.
That's like basic Newton. Like, you can't get Newton right, I'm not going to be interested in your scientific thoughts.
No, absolutely. Yeah, what I was going to say is that it's like, all right, so when we find human skeletons, we can usually tell whether or not they had a pathology, some kind of bone disorder or whatever that caused them to have abnormally long or short arms outside of the typical human range, with the exception of some unique outliers. And on top of that, those pathologies that tend to give people like, I don't know, gigantism or something along, or achondroplasia on either side of the spectrum are pretty rare. So when we find a species that has fossilized, which itself is a rare process, the odds of it being a typical member of the species rather than a pathologic outlier, particularly when natural selection involved, well, they're pretty dang good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty clear that this isn't just an individual with, like dwarfism or gigantism or whatever, or any other kind of strange bone disorder. And if it did, well, typically that's preserved. Even in fossils, a lot of these pathologies are preserved through mineralization. So, but, Eric isn't fond of those kinds of arguments. There's too many words.
All right, we have to have a decision, though. And I'm going to leave this up to you. We have less than 3 minutes left of Eric, but we are also coming up on a time when I usually wrap things up. Do you want to keep forging ahead? Because I'm good with that, because we don't have enough to do another episode of Eric with Erika on this. So,
yeah, let's forge ahead.
All right.
I'll try to hold my tongue for this next bit so we can get on for as long as possible.
You guys are getting extra Dapper Dino content today, just because we're so close to the end. Here we go.
Lucky ducks.
I know. Lucky ducks, which, by the way, are a kind of dinosaur.
Aww, that's cute.
Children. Do you know if it's actually the ancestor of anybody? It could be the ancestor of nobody. It could have just died. I mean, here you have suppose it's the perfect transitional form. How many kids did it have? Well, you can't prove it had any kids. So it's certainly not evidence that it is an ancestor.
Yeah, but we've already covered
to
that.
humans. You just can't go there. You can't jump to that distinction.
But that one's actually one of the biggies that is still taught in schools today, based off of what again? A thigh and a shin bone.
Yeah.
And they've got footprints 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to say real quick, go look up pictures of the Lucy find. It's a lot more than a thigh and a shin bone. In fact, they already talked about the hip in this, so this guy should know better.
Oh my god, I can't believe that. Hey, Dapper, you have a fan in the chat. Faithful, Honest, and True has dunked on you and called you Dapper Dork.
I'll take it. You know what? Look, calling me a dork is far from the worst thing I've ever been called. So, Faithful, Honest, and True, you're going to have to do a lot better than that. So, but welcome to the chat, by the way. Well, hey, you know what? If Faithful, Honest, and True wants to try and get a rise out of me by insulting me in the chat, I say let him. And that goes for my mods. If he wants to try... Look, here, this is for my mods. If Faithful, Honest, and True wants to try and get me angry by insulting me, please let him. Because here's a quick clue. Super dork! Ah! Look, but here's the thing, though. I was in the Navy, and you had to grow a pretty thick skin to survive, so... the chances that you're going to call me something that I find honestly insulting are extremely small. Extremely.
Extreme can't.
Like, I can't even think of what you could call me that I would then be like, oh no, you said the thing about me. Like, yeah, my pearl clutching days are well behind me is basically what I'm trying to say to you. It's just not going to happen. But, oh, you're not trying to get me angry? Okay, well...
Yeah, he's just being silly.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's more than fair.
I love you here.
Yeah.
Love you here, buddy.
Yeah, you are very welcome to the chat. But let's get some more Eric in here, after we realize that Eric is badly silly about Lucy. And also, even if Lucy had just been a thigh and a tibia or whatever they just said, and, like, we have other specimens of the species. It doesn't matter.
Yep, that boils down to that, and the fact we also have most of a skull for Lucy. I believe we have a lot of the ribs. We've got the clavicle. We've got parts of arms. This dude is just wrong, but whatevs.
Yeah,
and they got several bones to Lucy, but not at all a complete skeleton. I mean, not even close. Nothing like Neanderthals. We have every bone in the Neanderthal's body. We don't have that at all for Lucy.
Not for Lucy, but for her species, I'm pretty sure we have almost all of them.
We're pretty dang close. I mean, keep in mind, like, we don't have all of a tyrannosaur, even though we have, like, 50 specimens, and we still know what a tyrannosaur looks like.
Right. Actually, Eric Vierthaler, by the way, and I...
Right.
So Eric Vierthaler visited visited me. Well, actually, he was visiting his grandmother, but I was within easy driving distance, and so we actually went to go see a mounted, relatively new Tyrannosaurus mount called Victoria, and it actually included bones that had never been discovered in any other Tyrannosaurus. And unsurprisingly, it did very little to change our idea of what Tyrannosaurus looked like, because scientists aren't idiots.
Yeah.
So
absolutely, yeah, they do their best, and frankly, it's quite good.
Right, exactly. They were like, "Oh, look, this I think it was the syrangular bone." They're like, "There's never been a Tyrannosaurus syrangular bone," and I'm looking at it, I'm like, "Yeah, but it looks like every reconstruction of a Tyrannosaurus syrangular bone, so we got it right, guys. Good job." Yeah. Hand out cookies at the next paleontology movie. Yeah. So here we go.
Well, let's look at that. Who are these Neanderthals that we're hearing about?
Oh, good.
Yeah, Neanderthals are used today as great evidence of evolution, and they're saying that
Sorry?
I said, I bet they're just going to say they're people.
Probably. I mean,
decrepit.
To be fair, I would also call them people, but not the same species.
Oh, yeah. I feel happy with the person, too.
Yeah, like if there were a Neanderthal that came walking in, like, I don't know, maybe someone cloned a Neanderthal or something, like, I would be like, no, this person should be extended all of the human rights and privileges that we give to Homo sapiens.
Oh, yeah.
But
genus Homo is
that's
where I draw the line at personhood, as far as classical personhood. There's a that's a rabbit hole, though.
I'll be honest, I'm actually pretty sympathetic to grade 8 personhood arguments. I think they make some good points.
I think they're pretty good too. I mean, it pretty much boils down to can we get a good enough testing analog, like, just through technology? If we can, then there's literally no reason to ever test on a grade 8.
I've actually seen some evidence that would lean me towards elephant personhood and cetacean person.
Cetacean too.
Yeah, cetacean personhood too. So I'm actually fairly broad in terms of my my what I think it might be okay to call a person. I'm not convinced on any of those non-human persons, but I'm pretty close on some of them. So
yeah, I think that it could easily be argued that personhood is something that should be extended to them. It just depends on, like, what would that entail, right? Like, what kind of rights does personhood entail?
Yeah. I would argue that the Declaration of... Well, I would say that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights should basically be interpreted as a person's rights sort of idea. So
I would say so too. I just don't know how it currently is tracking. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what they're saying.
Well, you can make arguments like captivity programs for great apes would constitute involuntary confinement, and also encroaching on their territories that they've marked out would essentially be land theft, because they own that land.
Yeah, I think you could make an argument for that. I think that with a lot of the great apes rehabilitation programs, which would technically be something that they couldn't leave on their own volition, are important, though.
Yeah.
It's toss them out into the wild if they didn't grow up there.
Well, you could make certain arguments, like some of them have been so incapacitated by humans for no fault of their own that they are essentially wards of whatever organization.
The state,
just like you can do with some humans. Like, some humans are sufficiently incapacitated for whatever reason that they become wards of the state or of some adult who essentially adopts them. And we that's something you can look. It's complicated. But we'll keep going with Eric, because there's a huge rabbit hole there to go with non-human personhood. I don't want to go down that road yet.
These are the pre-man. The problem is when you discover and...
Oh, I'm going to drink for that, because Neanderthals aren't pre-man.
I'll drink for that as well.
Yeah.
And do some research on Neanderthal. They were human beings.
Yeah.
Now, the difference being that they were even a little bit more robust, heavier built than us today. In some cases, their bones are even thicker than ours, and their skulls were a little bit bigger, about several hundred cc's bigger than our skull, our capacity, our brain capacity is today.
Also, I'm going to take another quick drink for Eric getting it right, because all of those things that he said, as far as I know, are basically correct. Neanderthals were more robust and they had slightly bigger brain cases than Homo sapiens.
Those are both correct. I think one thing he's missing, though. When you say robust, I think people tend to think not necessarily just more heavy set with a bigger center of gravity, but I think some people tend to misconstrue that with bigger.
Yeah, they were not taller.
Heavier. They weren't taller. They were broader than we are.
They were like Tolkien dwarves.
They were. That's the thing. I was joking around. I mean, they don't call it the Middle Earth hypothesis for nothing. It's like this idea that multiple hominids were roaming around at the same time, and you really could kind of assign a Tolkien style race, quote unquote, to all of them. I mean, you'd give Naledi would be like orcs. I guess humans would be kind of along the elvish line. Hobbits for Floresiensis, and Denisovans. Humans, maybe. You would have to give elves to humans because we were the tallest and the most lithe.
Yeah.
You could play around with it. It would be really fun. We got to finish this. Let's do it, Dapper.
All right, here we go.
So they also had art. They had culture. They buried their dead. Yep. They found a bear bone that had holes drilled in it, like a flute, so that you could play a flute.
Out of a bear skull?
Just
maybe.
Because they're buried in caves doesn't mean that this is something half man, half ape.
Did say bone.
Now, I guess we could call them cavemen, but because they lived in caves.
All right, real quick. Saying something is half man, half ape is like saying, oh, that's half lizard, half reptile. It's a stupid thing to say.
Half dog, half canine.
Yeah.
So stupid.
It doesn't make any sense.
We still got those today, man. There's guys running around in places that still live in caves. So Neanderthal man was a perfectly normal human, other than the fact that it was slightly larger. And on some of them, they found them hunched over. And they thought, well, these guys are evolving. You know, they're going from 4 legs to 2 legs. Then they discovered some of these individuals had arthritis. They were actually walking on 2, going down to 4.
All right, quick drink for the whole, Neanderthal is just pathological Homo sapiens, because no. Some of them had pathologies.
He might be going in the direction of, like, they took care of their dead, or their weak, rather. So, like, some had arthritis, and that means we know that they were empathetic towards those among them that lived old enough to get arthritis.
I'm going, like, 80% towards, like, the differences between Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis is due to pathologies. I'm like, 80% sure that's where he's going. But we'll find out.
Oh, God.
It's the opposite of what the evolution worldview is teaching. So, yet again, we look at the science and we realize, wow, nope, nothing has evolved. All we've got is mankind starting off perfect like God created him and devolving, going downhill.
Nope, drinking.
Not evolving.
Right. I guess one of the Neanderthal skeletons they found in Poland was wearing a full suit of chainmail armor.
What?
Proof that he lived millions of years ago.
Yeah, seriously.
Citation needed.
No, I think that's just blatantly false.
Yeah, I've never heard anything about a Neanderthal in chainmail. Mostly because there have been no Neanderthals from beyond the like before the Paleolithic, basically. Like, no.
But we just now figured out that we could do knots. Like,
yeah, like, no. Yeah, you're gonna have to provide me with an excellent citation for that one, or I'm just gonna be like,
Yeah,
it just doesn't fit, does it? It doesn't fit the evolutionist worldview, but it does fit perfectly the creationist worldview, because the creationist worldview would claim that after the flood, this flood triggered an ice age, and so.
Oh, you mean the flood that melted the planet triggered an ice age? Yeah, that makes sense. I'm gonna drink for that one too.
Classic.
People would be living in caves. They'd find natural places of shelter and habitat.
Oh, actually, it reminds me. I think it was today. Vice Rhino released a nice video about the flood triggering an ice age, and like Ken Ham was like, "Oh, there was because of the increased volcanism as a result of the rapid plate tectonics, there was an ash cloud." And Vice Rhino points out that at that point, this Earth is hotter than it's receiving more energy. It's just heating up itself more than the sun is. So an ash cloud would, instead of being, it would just be a blanket, not not like a parasol. So the sun is a minor secondary source of heat at that point. An ash cloud would make things worse.
We're not. Yeah, there's no way.
No.
Sad. In order to live shortly after the flood, and then civilization would begin to develop after that. So what we see in the archaeology today actually matches with what the Bible teaches.
Amen.
Not with your interpretation, at least, Eric.
No, from archaeology, physics, geology, chemistry, biology, anthropology, you name it.
But optics would be fine with young Earth creationism, America. So.
Optics, true.
Oh, and John Raps for $2 redo says, "Sorry, I'm late. Question: were Neanderthals on the Ark?" That's a good question. I guess.
That's a good question.
I guess they kind of would have had to have been, because all of that genetic information, quote unquote, would have had to be present in Noah's sons and or daughters-in-law. So.
Oh God! Unfortunately, according to Nathaniel Jensen, however you want to say it, the Neanderthals are a result of a post-flood, rapidly mutating species of like hominid.
It would have to be like
came from.
It would have to be post-Babel. You don't even. You can't even go post-flood.
Yeah, it's it is. Oh God, I don't know. Go check out Replacing Darwin. Actually, please don't. Don't give them your money.
Absolutely. So we've looked at several of these various finds, different fossils that are used to support this ape-like creature to mankind evolution. And we found that there isn't any good, solid finds, and even if you did find something that looked like a transitional fossil, which we have yet to find any that really are transitioning from ape to mankind or ape-like, it's kind of like your father, Kent Hovind, Dr. Hovind, when he talked.
Oh, he's bringing up his dad. Oh, I wonder if Eric's going to object to that. He probably won't, just to save face, but I'll bet he's squirming at that point.
Talks about in some of his videos, you can arrange skeletons in any order that you want and make it look like one came from the other.
Yeah.
But really, you can't know that. You don't know.
Okay. It's nice that, yeah, sure, I guess you can arrange skeletons in an order, but what if the skeletons that exist match a morphology that was predicted by scientists before they were ever discovered? Because that's what actually happened.
To mention, part of the key of evolution is morphologic change through geologic time. So
Right.
It's not like these are found in a single layer, as much as they would love that.
Yeah. So okay, we'll keep going. We're close. We're less than a minute. We're less than a half a minute away.
So if that had kids, I mean, you can arrange skateboards in order to a car and suggest that somehow the car evolved from the skateboard, but.
Find me the reproducing skateboards and or cars, and then we'll talk. Until then, shut up about it.
Now, where's our transitional board car or skate car?
Yeah, I mean, it's just... Also, TD Lane says, D&D idea, Neanderthal dwarves. I'm not saying I've never done that. That may be a thing that has come up. Yeah. Hey, you know what? I've been doing some world building stuff in the background for D&D, so maybe. I'll just say maybe.
It's not going to prove anything. It's just your own conjecture.
And that's why I say when we look at these skeletons and we look at these bones, nobody would come to these conclusions if you didn't have the preconceived idea about that. You wouldn't come to these conclusions.
Eric Hovind.
Oh, and that's the beginning of the video again. So we just finished it. So I don't believe that was technically the end of the interview, but I edited the video a little bit to cut out irrelevant waffling.
Oh my God. I mean, the long story short is misunderstanding after misunderstanding after misunderstanding after misunderstanding.
There were some deliberate lies.
Well, yes. I mean, yeah, we can say that as well.
Yeah. So at best, misunderstandings, and in many cases, just outright dishonesty.
we gotta find a brand new video at some point.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. This is probably not the last Eric with Erika, because there will be other times when Bent Hovind isn't around or just needs a break or something. So I will be on the lookout. I'm sure Erika will also be on the lookout. So this is not it for Eric with Erika. Yeah. Well, these are too much fun.
No, yeah, I'm Bent's understudy, and I'm raring and ready to go at any time.
Yeah, well, and one of the things is, especially with the human evolution stuff, you know more about it than me, so I get to take the backseat sometimes, which is nice.
Listen, I just know more about it because I spent so much damn time reading about it in school. That's like that's my minor and then part of my master's, kind of.
I mean, you say you say that like it's no big thing, but that's how you end up knowing more, is you read a lot. Like people ask me, how did you end up knowing so much about dinosaurs? I spend hours upon hours reading. Right. Like people are like, what would you recommend I do to learn as much about you as about dinosaurs? Go to like JSTOR and just search and read technical papers. Like you can start out with some lay-level books, but like I have 2 peer-reviewed dinosaur papers up in various tabs on Chrome right now. Like there's a reason for that. It's because I do that. Yeah. So it's like, if you spend enough time reading the technical literature on a subject, you'll know a lot about it. Shocker, right?
Yeah, you tend to pick some things up once you've read enough about them. Imagine that.
Right. So you have done that with human evolution in a way that I will never have done. I cannot imagine. Yeah, I cannot imagine a future in which I know more about human evolution than Erika. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Well, again, that's me with dinosaurs. I'm working on it, but I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Well, that's the thing, because
I don't think I'll ever read it.
I'm not going to stop working on it. So you might get to the point where I am now, but I will have surpassed you by then.
I know. I'm going to be playing catch-up forever. I'm going to have to outlive you.
Well, so am I, though. Well, I mean, I've already been around for 150 million years, so I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
True that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry, Erika. I've already survived countless generations of humans.
Oh, God, I know. I know. You'll probably outlive us.
I'm just... so, here's the secret. I'm hoping that the global warming takes us back to the Jurassic climate.
Oh my God, imagine that. Imagine having Antarctica and it's like a continent again.
we can put dinosaurs... Well, actually, I was going to say we can put dinosaurs back there, but they're already dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are one of the only things that lives in Antarctica.
True. I think all year round there's like a single arthropod that like chills over there. It's very small.
So Vandelian 1998 for 1.99 cents. You could watch Eric Virthaler vid for Eric with Erika, or sorry, Eric the Heart. I'm not even sure who that is. Vandelian 1998. Let me know. Let me know on like Facebook or something what that is, because I'm not even sure who that is. But okay, let's do. I don't know who that is. Yeah, let's do so. I'm gonna do some quick channel update stuff. And then I'll let Erika do whatever she wants with, plugging future videos or streams or whatever. But so channel news. The most obvious thing about channel news is I have activated memberships. If you become a member, the benefits are spelled out in the tiers, but basically they're the same as my Patreon benefits. You won't get the ability to vote on Patreon polls as a member, but as a member you will get the emojis and the badge for being a member. New members get the tetrapod badge, which is that green little thing that you'll see when like TD Lane or Thronmulus post. After 2 months it goes to the monocle. After 6 months it goes to a top hat. After I don't remember exactly what the months are, but it goes the tetrapod, then the monocle, a top hat, then a golden top hat, then a Ceratosaurus skull, and then if you remember for 2 whole years, which, I mean, maybe that'll happen ever, the badge goes to my emoji for me that Thronmulus just posted. You also, you get access to the emojis and the private patron/member Discord, where I will post links to upcoming videos that I have set as unlisted. I don't currently plan on doing any members-only live chats. I guess I can't completely rule it out, but I don't see a good reason to, because, I don't know. I appreciate all the participation from my non-members, too. So I don't foresee that being much of a thing. And if it is, it won't be main content. It'll just be kind of a private members-only hangout just to have fun. So, yeah, don't expect a lot of that stuff. It'll pretty much just be like it is now, except that members will get access to cool emojis that I make. This Thursday, the next episode of Fluffy Dino Lads should be coming out. That'll be episode 3 of 4, in case you were wondering. We're going to be continuing our look into how badly wrong In His Image can get a comparative anatomy. But also, I want to point out, In His Image actually took down the original video because he was not prepared for the comments. So if you go back to In His Image's page, please be nice. I like In His Image. We have interacted numerous times on Twitter and in YouTube, and he has always been nothing but extremely nice to me. So I'm not saying don't criticize his arguments, but don't make it personal, right? Because In His Image has always been nothing but a really great guy to me. So
in this house, we respect our interlocutors.
Exactly. Well, unless they don't respect us, in which case, whatever.
Then gloves off.
Right. But In His Image, just like Standing for Truth, I have never had an interaction with them where I thought they were being mean or inappropriate or anything but respectful and very nice to me. So,
Dude, I love Standing. He's great. I disagree with pretty much everything he says, but Standing himself as a person, I have never had a poor interaction with
exactly.
him.
Actually, even in that after show that he did on or he was in the chat for on Maddox's channel, John Maddox. We had some great banter back and forth, and both he and I agreed that we needed additional moderation in the actual streamers going on. So yeah, please,
true.
Please be respectful with In His Image. Saturday, I don't know. I might. So I know there is going to be the 4th of July thing that I'm going to be doing with Vandalia 1998. That might be the only thing I do that day, just because I don't know how much streaming I can do on a single day, and I'm trying to take it a little bit easy next weekend, just because the last few weekends I've been doing a lot of work. So I need to take a little bit of me time. So there might not be anything on this channel for this Saturday. Next Tuesday should be another Kent with Bent. And then the Thursday after probably won't be the next Fluffy Dino Lads. I'm hoping that I can get my video about turtle evolution out. So, yeah. Well, it turns out there's actually a whole lot to know about turtle evolution and a whole lot left to be known, because there's a whole lot that isn't known. So
we like the most about science when there's big questions.
Exactly. The questions are the important part, which is one of the things that Landon Curtinol likes to drive home. It's the questions that are important. Ask questions. But I think that's pretty much it for channel news. So feel free to join as a channel member if you want, or don't. But do like the video. And Erica, what do you got for us?
Oh, pretty much nothing. I've got a Chromosome 2 video that came out today, so that's nice. I actually have a video scheduled to release, like already uploaded to YouTube and everything, about the stoned ape hypothesis for next week.
Nice.
Oh God, what is today? Tuesday, so that should be next Monday. And then I am currently working on, I think 2 different response videos, and I might start streaming. We'll see.
But Erica, did you write or record the stoned ape hypothesis video as a stoned ape?
Oh God, I wish.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a no.
Yeah,
so
I wish.
All right. So I think that is it for us. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you especially to our new members, which is all of my members, which includes Thronimulus, TD Lane, Ilya Moon, Beethoven No Relation, and Craft Tequila, as well as all of our super chatters, Mothra J Disco, Vandalia 1998, I already said Mothra J Disco, Atheist Junior, Dave Dalafior, Speed of Sound and Gravity, Eric the Tyrannoceratops, Ian Chen, and John Rapp. Thank you all very much. So yeah, I will see you guys hopefully on Thursday.
Guys.
I'm the Dapper Dino.